To our amazing viewers at Infidelity Tales Lab, welcome and thank you. Your presence makes these stories worth sharing. We'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Severed Ties. A steady autumn rain beat against the windows of Pike County Courthouse as Harlan Mercer waited for Judge Laurel Weinstein to sign the final divorce papers. At 42, Harlan sat straight-backed in his tailored charcoal suit, a physical embodiment of the self-control that had made him one of Pennsylvania's most formidable criminal defense attorneys. His calloused hands, remnants of his working-class upbringing, rested on the polished table, betraying nothing of the storm churning inside him. Across the room, Bethany Mercer, soon to revert to Bethany Lafferty, sat beside her boyfriend, Ryan Steiger. The sight of Ryan's hand resting possessively on Bethany's thigh made Harlan's jaw clench imperceptibly. Only 6 months ago, Ryan had been a client Harlan had successfully defended against aggravated assault charges. The man's gratitude had apparently extended to seducing Harlan's wife of 15 years. The terms are straightforward. Harlan's attorney, Marlene Wu, summarized. Mr. Mercer will maintain primary residence, and Ms. Lafferty receives the vacation property. Joint custody of Theo with alternating weekends and holidays. Child support as calculated by standard guidelines. Judge Weinstein nodded, reviewing the documents. Relatively amicable as these things go. I appreciate that. Harlan's eyes flicked toward Bethany. Amicable wasn't the word he'd choose. Calculated was more accurate. He'd learned long ago that revenge was best served cold, methodical, and within the bounds of legal procedure, at least initially. One final matter, Judge Weinstein said. Theo's birthday falls this Saturday. As per the agreement, Ms. Lafferty will host the celebration, but Mr. Mercer is entitled to attend for 2 hours. Ryan leaned forward, jaw tight. Your Honor, given the circumstances. The agreement stands, Judge Weinstein interrupted firmly. 2 hours, Mr. Mercer. I trust everyone will behave appropriately for the child's sake. Outside the courthouse, Marlene touched Harlan's arm. You okay? Fine, Harlan replied, watching Bethany and Ryan hurry to their car. Still don't understand why you didn't fight for the full value of the practice. She gets half despite the fact that you built it while she was. It's not about the money, Harlan cut her off. Marlene studied him. You've got that look. What look? The one you get before you demolish a prosecution's case. Harlan allowed himself a small smile. I need to prepare for Theo's birthday. As he walked to his car, his phone buzzed. A text from Pascal Bennett, his former military buddy who now ran a private intelligence firm. Information secured. Meeting tonight? Harlan typed back, confirmed. 9 p.m. The rain intensified as he drove away, his mind already mapping out the next moves in a game Bethany and Ryan didn't yet realize they were playing. Chapter 2. Hidden Cards. The Bennett security offices occupied the top floor of a converted factory building in downtown Milford. Pascal Bennett greeted Harlan with a firm handshake, his prosthetic right hand cold against Harlan's palm, a souvenir from their final deployment together in Afghanistan. Coffee, Pascal offered, leading Harlan past rows of monitors where analysts worked quietly. Thanks. Harlan settled into a chair in Pascal's office. What did you find? Pascal slid a tablet across the desk. Ryan Steiger is a careful man, but not careful enough. 3 years ago, he was working security for Westridge Pharmaceuticals. During that time, he developed a side arrangement with Del Mar cartel affiliates, helping them access proprietary formulas. Harlan raised an eyebrow. That wasn't in his criminal record. Because he was never caught, Pascal replied. The company suspected something, but couldn't prove it. They fired him quietly to avoid scandal. That's when he moved to Pike County and eventually became your client. And Bethany? Pascal's expression tightened. She's been planning this for over a year. Found text messages between them dating back 14 months. She's been feeding him information about your cases, your schedule, even your security system. Harlan nodded, his face betraying nothing. The trust fund, untouched, as you suspected. $2.3 million sitting in an offshore account under her maiden name. She never disclosed it during the divorce proceedings. And Theodora Lafferty? Pascal tapped the screen, bringing up a photograph of an elderly woman. Bethany's great-aunt. Terminal cancer, 6 months tops, according to her medical records. Bethany is her only living relative and sole beneficiary. Estate valued around $4.7 million. Harlan processed this information silently, pieces clicking into place. There's more, Pascal said carefully. Your son's medical records. Harlan's expression hardened. Show me. Pascal pulled up documents on a tablet. Theo's allergies. The medical forms Bethany submitted to the school last month removed your son's peanut allergy from his official records. For the first time, a flicker of genuine emotion crossed Harlan's face. Raw, unfiltered rage that vanished almost immediately behind his professional mask. One wrong snack could put him in anaphylactic shock, Harlan said quietly. I've already contacted the school nurse anonymously. The records have been corrected, Pascal assured him. Harlan stood, buttoning his suit jacket. I need one more thing. Judge Sylvia Monroe. Pascal frowned. Family court? She's incorruptible, Harlan. I don't need corruption. I need her schedule for Saturday afternoon. Understanding dawned on Pascal's face. The birthday party. Can you give me a direct line to her chambers? Pascal nodded slowly. Consider it done. As Harlan turned to leave, Pascal called after him. Harlan, whatever you're planning. Don't worry, Harlan replied without turning around. Everything will be perfectly legal. That's not what concerns me. Harlan paused at the door. What does? I've seen that look before. In Kandahar. Before you walked into that compound alone. Harlan's lips curved in a cold smile. Then you know what happened to the men who underestimated me. Chapter 3. The Birthday Blockade. Saturday arrived with picture-perfect blue skies, as if the universe were mocking the darkness of Harlan's purpose. He parked his Mercedes a block from the sprawling Tudor home he had once shared with Bethany, the house where he'd carried her across the threshold, where they brought Theo home from the hospital, where he'd found them together 4 months ago. Harlan checked his watch. 2 p.m. exactly, the time stipulated in the court order. In one hand, he carried a carefully wrapped package. In the other, his phone with Judge Monroe's direct number programmed and ready. Children's laughter echoed from the backyard as Harlan approached the front door. He rang the bell, straightened his tie, and waited. The door swung open to reveal Bethany in a floral sundress, her smile evaporating at the sight of him. Behind her stood Ryan, arms crossed over his chest like a bouncer. What are you doing here? Bethany demanded. Harlan's voice remained steady. I'm here for Theo's birthday. As permitted by court order. Ryan stepped forward. The party's already started. Theo doesn't need you ruining it. 2 hours, Harlan replied. Judge Weinstein was quite specific. Bethany's sister Liv appeared in the hallway behind them. Is there a problem? No problem, Harlan said calmly. I'm simply exercising my legal right to attend my son's birthday celebration. Ryan positioned himself in the doorway, physically blocking entry. Listen, you pathetic deadbeat, get lost. Nobody wants you here. Bethany stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. You think anyone in there respects you? After what happened? After I left you? You're nothing but a joke to them. Harlan's expression remained impassive. The court order, Bethany. Ryan placed a hand on Harlan's chest. Court order doesn't mean shit here. Try to push past me. See what happens. From the corner of his eye, Harlan noticed 2 security guards, friends of Ryan's from his bouncer days, approaching from the side of the house. Mr. Mercer, one called out. Time to leave. He placed a firm hand on Harlan's shoulder. For a moment, everything balanced on a knife's edge. Harlan could feel the weight of the guard's hand, see the smug triumph in Ryan's eyes, the contempt in Bethany's. Then Harlan did something that visibly unsettled them all. He smiled. Without a word, he placed Theo's gift on the doorstep, turned, and walked calmly back to his car. Once inside, he dialed the number and waited. Judge Monroe, came the crisp answer. Your Honor, this is Harlan Mercer. I apologize for disturbing your weekend, but there's an urgent matter regarding a child welfare concern and violation of court orders that requires immediate attention. 10 minutes later, he watched from his car as Bethany's phone rang. The transformation on her face was visible even from a distance, shock followed by fear. She handed the phone to Ryan, whose expression darkened as he listened. Moments later, Liv came rushing out of the house, face pale as she hurried toward Harlan's car. "What the hell did you just do?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "The judge called and immediately wants to see us. All of us. Today." Harlan stepped out of his car, adjusting his cuffs. "I simply reported a violation of a court order and potential child endangerment." Child endangerment? Are you insane? Removing Theo's peanut allergy from his medical records? Harlan's voice was deadly quiet. "What would you call it?" The color drained from Liv's face. "Bethany wouldn't. Tell her and Ryan to bring Theo to Judge Monroe's chambers in 1 hour. I'll meet you there." Harlan opened his car door. "And Liv, this is just the beginning." Chapter 4. Chambers of Truth. Judge Sylvia Monroe's chambers felt unnaturally quiet for a Saturday afternoon. The typical courthouse bustle was absent, leaving only the soft ticking of an antique wall clock and the occasional rustle of papers as the judge reviewed the documents before her. Harlan sat perfectly still, a statue of patience. Across the room, Bethany repeatedly checked her phone while Ryan fidgeted with his watch. Theo sat between them, playing a game on a tablet, headphones isolating him from the tension saturating the room. Judge Monroe finally looked up, her steel-gray eyes moving deliberately between the parties. At 67, her reputation for no-nonsense justice was legendary in the county. "I've reviewed the evidence Mr. Mercer has provided," she began, her voice carrying the weight of decades on the bench. "Falsification of medical records, violation of custody orders, and what appears to be a pattern of parental alienation." Bethany straightened. "Your Honor, those accusations are documented." Judge Monroe interrupted, holding up a folder. "School records showing the removal of a life-threatening allergy. Text messages between you and Mr. Steiger discussing ways to prevent Mr. Mercer from seeing his son. Testimony from the security personnel Mr. Steiger hired stating they were instructed to remove Mr. Mercer by any means necessary if he attempted to attend the birthday celebration." Ryan leaned forward. "Judge, I can explain." "Mr. Steiger, you have no legal standing in this matter," Judge Monroe stated flatly. "Your presence here is purely as an observer." The judge turned to Theo, her expression softening. "Young man, would you mind stepping outside with my assistant for a few minutes? She has some books you might enjoy." After Theo left, Judge Monroe's demeanor hardened again. "Ms. Lafferty, these actions constitute contempt of court at minimum. At worst, they could be grounds for modification of the custody arrangement." Bethany paled. "You can't." "I absolutely can," Judge Monroe cut in. "And given the documented risk to the child's health, I'm inclined to issue an emergency modification today." "Your Honor," Harlan interjected smoothly, "if I may offer an alternative." All eyes turned to him. This was the moment he'd orchestrated, the pivot point in his carefully constructed plan. "I have no desire to disrupt Theo's life further," Harlan continued. "Children need stability. What I propose is this. We maintain the current custody arrangement, but with court-mandated supervision of Ms. Lafferty's parenting decisions regarding medical care and education." Judge Monroe considered this. "You're being remarkably generous, Mr. Mercer." "I'm thinking of my son," Harlan replied simply. What he didn't say was that this was merely the opening gambit, the sacrifice of a pawn to position his knights. The supervision would require weekly meetings, documentation, and scrutiny that would soon become a noose around Bethany's neck. "Additionally," Harlan added, "I request that Mr. Steiger have no involvement in decisions regarding Theo's well-being until such time as the court deems appropriate." Ryan surged to his feet. "This is bullshit. You can't. Mr. Steiger." Judge Monroe's voice cracked like a whip. "One more outburst, and I'll have you removed. You have no parental rights here." Bethany grabbed Ryan's arm, pulling him back to his seat. Her eyes never left Harlan's face, finally recognizing the trap closing around her. Judge Monroe made her ruling. Supervised custody for Bethany, weekly reports to the court, and restrictions on Ryan's involvement with Theo. As they left the chambers, Harlan paused beside Bethany. You should have read the divorce agreement more carefully, he murmured, particularly the clause about endangering Theo's health. This isn't over, Bethany hissed. On that, Harlan agreed. We are in perfect alignment. Outside, Pascal waited in an unmarked car. How did it go? Phase 1 complete, Harlan replied, watching as Bethany, Ryan, and Theo drove away. Begin Phase 2. I want everything on Ryan's former employers at Westridge Pharmaceuticals. Board members, security protocols, internal investigations, all of it. And Bethany's great aunt. Arrange a visit. Tell her I'm handling a revision to her estate planning. Pro bono, of course. Pascal raised an eyebrow. You're playing a dangerous game. No, Harlan corrected. I'm playing their game. They just don't know the rules yet. Chapter 5. Aunt Theodora's Bequest. Riverdale Palliative Care Center sat on 15 manicured acres overlooking the Delaware River. Harlan navigated the hushed corridors with the confidence of someone who belonged there, nodding to staff as he passed. The bouquet of lilies in his hand completed the image of a dutiful family visitor. Room 317 was bathed in afternoon light when he entered. Theodora Lafferty lay propped against pillows, her once substantial frame now fragile beneath the blankets. Despite her illness, her eyes were sharp and assessing as they fixed on Harlan. You're not from hospice, she stated flatly. Harlan placed the lilies on a side table. No, Ms. Lafferty. I'm Harlan Mercer. Recognition flashed across her face. Bethany's ex-husband, the lawyer. She studied him for a moment. You've got some nerve showing up here. I've been told that before, Harlan replied, taking a seat beside her bed. I understand you've been working with Brady and Winters on your estate plan. Theodora's eyes narrowed. Bethany mentioned you were conniving. Seems she undersold it. Bethany tells many stories, Harlan responded evenly. Some truer than others. Get to the point, Mr. Mercer. I'm dying, not senile. Harlan appreciated her directness. Your estate is substantial. Currently, it's structured to pass entirely to Bethany upon your death. She's my only living relative. Is she? Harlan removed a folder from his briefcase. Did you know that Bethany has been systematically endangering your great-great-nephew Theo's health by concealing his medical conditions? He placed documented evidence before her. The altered school records, affidavits from the school nurse, Judge Monroe's ruling. Theodora's hands trembled slightly as she examined the papers. Why would she do this? Control, Harlan replied simply, and to remove obstacles to her relationship with Ryan Steiger, who, incidentally, has a documented history of violence and connections to drug trafficking. He showed her Ryan's sealed criminal records, which Pascal had obtained through channels best left unexplained. Bethany told me you were abusive, Theodora said, watching his reaction carefully. Did she mention specific incidents? Theodora hesitated. No, just that you were controlling. Ask yourself, Ms. Lafferty, in the 15 years you've known me, have you ever seen evidence of that? Or is it possible Bethany is projecting her own behaviors onto me? Silence filled the room as Theodora absorbed his words. Finally, she sighed heavily. What do you want, Mr. Mercer? I'm not here for your money, Harlan assured her. I'm here because Theo deserves protection, including from his mother if necessary. And you expect me to disinherit my only niece based on your say-so? I expect nothing, Harlan replied. I'm merely providing information you deserve to have before finalizing your estate plans. He stood to leave, placing his card on her table. Whatever you decide, I wish you peace in the time you have left. As he reached the door, Theodora called out, Mr. Mercer. He turned. I've lived long enough to recognize genuine concern, she said quietly, and genuine manipulation. Sometimes they look remarkably similar. Harlan nodded. The difference is in the outcome, Ms. Lafferty. Who benefits from your decision and who suffers? 3 days later, Harlan received a call from Gerald Winters, Theodora's estate attorney. Mr. Mercer, Ms. Lafferty has requested your presence for the signing of her new will tomorrow at 2 p.m. She was quite insistent. When Harlan arrived the following day, he found not only Theodora and her attorney, but also Bethany, her face tight with barely contained fury. Welcome to our little gathering, Theodora greeted him, her voice stronger than during his previous visit. "I made some changes I thought everyone should hear directly." Gerald Winters cleared his throat uncomfortably before reading the new provisions. 20% of the estate to Bethany outright, 30% to Theo in a trust managed by a neutral third-party trustee until he reached 25, and the remaining 50% to establish a foundation for children with severe allergies, with Harlan appointed to the board of directors. Bethany's composure shattered. "You can't be serious. After everything I've done for you." "Yes, let's discuss what you've done," Theodora interrupted coldly. "Like telling me Harlan couldn't be bothered to visit when I was hospitalized last year, when in fact you never told him I was ill. Or perhaps how you've been systematically overdosing my pain medication on the days before my cognitive assessments with Dr. Feldman." The room fell silent. Harlan hadn't known about this last detail. His respect for the elderly woman increased substantially. "You're confused," Bethany tried, shooting a venomous glance at Harlan. "He's manipulating you." "The only person who's been manipulating anyone is you, Bethany," Theodora stated firmly. "I may be dying, but I'm not a fool. Gerald has already documented my mental competence with 3 independent psychiatrists. The will stands." After the papers were signed, Harlan helped Theodora back to her room, leaving Bethany with the attorney. "She'll contest it," Theodora said as he adjusted her pillows. "She'll lose," Harlan replied confidently. Theodora studied him. "You didn't tell me about the medication." "I didn't know. But you're not surprised?" "No," Harlan admitted. "I'm not." Theodora patted his hand weakly. "You're a dangerous man, Harlan Mercer. I hope my great-nephew has inherited your spine rather than his mother's ethics." As Harlan left the facility, he spotted Bethany in the parking lot, speaking intensely with Ryan on her phone. When she saw Harlan, her expression transformed into pure hatred. Harlan merely nodded politely as he passed. Phase 2 was complete. The financial foundation of Bethany's future was crumbling, and with it, he suspected, Ryan's interest in their relationship. Now it was time for Phase 3, dismantling Ryan Steiger himself. Chapter 6, The Westridge Gambit. Westridge Pharmaceuticals' headquarters dominated the Philadelphia skyline, its glass facade reflecting the setting sun as Harlan rode the elevator to the executive floor. The email from Carson Westridge, the company's CEO, had been unexpected but not unwelcome, a perfect piece falling into place. "Mr. Mercer," Carson greeted him, rising from behind an imposing desk. At 65, he remained imposingly fit, his handshake firm. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." "Your message sounded urgent," Harlan replied, taking the offered seat. Carson nodded gravely. 3 days ago, our security team detected an intrusion into our research database, specifically our newest cancer treatment protocols, a potential billion-dollar breakthrough. "I'm sorry to hear that, but I specialize in criminal defense, not corporate espionage." The breach originated from an IP address associated with Ryan Steiger, Carson stated flatly. "Our former security consultant." Harlan kept his expression neutral despite the surge of satisfaction. Pascal had done his job perfectly, leaving digital breadcrumbs that any competent security team would find, but nothing that could be traced back to the actual source. "That's quite a coincidence," Harlan remarked carefully. "Is it?" Carson slid a folder across the desk. "Our investigation uncovered communications between Steiger and Del Mar cartel affiliates dating back to his employment here. We believe he's selling our research. Have you contacted the authorities?" "Not yet." Carson leaned forward. "We understand Mr. Steiger is involved with your ex-wife." Harlan raised an eyebrow. "You've done your homework. So has your friend, Mr. Bennett. He reached out to us last week with concerns about industrial espionage. Very patriotic of him." The two men regarded each other with mutual understanding. No explicit acknowledgement of the choreographed nature of this encounter was necessary. "What exactly are you asking of me, Mr. Westridge?" "Your expertise in negotiating with the Justice Department," Carson replied smoothly. "If we report this directly, it becomes public. Stock prices plummet. Investors panic. If, However, a respected attorney with federal connections helps facilitate a quiet investigation. Harlan nodded slowly. I can make some calls. Arrange a meeting with the appropriate officials. Properly framed, this could be handled with discretion. Excellent. Carson stood. I've taken the liberty of preparing a retainer agreement. As Harlan signed the documents, Carson added casually, "Oh, and we've scheduled a board meeting for next Friday to discuss the situation. Your presence would be appreciated." Friday? Harlan echoed. That's Theo's weekend with his mother. Bring him along, Carson suggested. My grandson is about his age. They could swim in the company pool while we meet. Harlan smiled thinly. That's very thoughtful. I'll need to make arrangements with Bethany, of course. Of course. Later that evening, Harlan called Bethany as required by the new court supervision order. I need to switch weekends with Theo. I have an unavoidable meeting Friday. Absolutely not, Bethany snapped. You know we're taking Theo to Ryan's lake house that weekend. It's been planned for weeks. I understand, but this is a significant client. Perhaps Ryan could. Ryan has already taken time off work, Bethany interrupted. The answer is no, Harlan. I see, Harlan replied evenly. In that case, I'll need to inform Judge Monroe about the change in plans. The supervision order requires disclosure of all overnight trips with Theo, particularly to remote locations. Silence stretched across the line. Fine, Bethany finally hissed. But you'll take him the following weekend instead. Thank you for your flexibility, Harlan responded politely. I'll pick him up Friday at noon. After ending the call, Harlan texted Pascal. Lake house plans canceled. Proceed with installation. The reply came moments later. Team already in place. Equipment ready. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. By Friday, Ryan would be meeting with federal agents about the data breach. By Saturday, the lake house would be ready for its purpose. And by Sunday, the final phase would begin. Harlan poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon and raised the glass in a silent toast to the coming storm. Chapter 7. Federal Interest. Friday morning dawned with a thunderstorm that matched the mood inside Ryan Steiger's apartment. Bethany paced the living room while Ryan hurriedly packed a suitcase. I don't understand why you have to go now, Bethany protested, following him into the bedroom. We were supposed to leave for the lake house in 3 hours. Ryan stuffed shirts haphazardly into the bag. I told you, Carson Westridge called personally. Said there's been a security breach and they need me to consult on the investigation. Why you? You haven't worked there in years. Because I designed part of their security system, Ryan snapped. Look, this could be a huge opportunity. If I help them identify the breach, they might bring me back with a promotion. Bethany's eyes narrowed, and the fact that Harlan suddenly needed to switch weekends with Theo doesn't strike you as suspicious? The timing is just a coincidence. Ryan paused, doubt flickering across his face before he dismissed it. Harlan doesn't even know about my history with Westridge. He's not that connected. You underestimate him, Bethany warned. He's been 2 steps ahead of us since the divorce. Well, I can hardly refuse when the CEO calls personally, can I? Ryan zipped his suitcase closed. Besides, Westridge is talking about a $50,000 consulting fee. We need that money, especially after your aunt's little bombshell. Bethany fell silent at the reminder of Theodore's will. The loss of millions she'd counted on still stung deeply. Fine, she conceded. But I'm telling you, Harlan is behind this somehow. You're paranoid, Ryan replied, checking his watch. I've got to go. I'll call you tonight after the meeting. Ryan kissed her quickly before grabbing his bags. Reschedule the lake house for next weekend. By then, we'll have the Westridge money to celebrate with. Across town, Harlan sat in Judge Monroe's chambers, reviewing modifications to the custody supervision order. These provisions seem reasonable, Judge Monroe noted, scanning the document. Expanded visitation during summer months, joint decision-making on education, and continued supervision of medical decisions. Thank you, Your Honor, Harlan replied. I believe this arrangement best serves Theo's interests while maintaining stability. Judge Monroe studied him over her reading glasses. You know, Mr. Mercer, I've seen hundreds of custody disputes. Usually, the wronged spouse fights for every advantage. Revenge benefits no one, Your Honor, Harlan answered smoothly. Least of all Theo. Judge Monroe's lips quirked slightly. Very diplomatic. I'll sign the order today. As Harlan gathered his papers, the judge added, by the way, a colleague mentioned seeing you at Westridge Pharmaceuticals yesterday. Expanding your practice areas? Just helping an old friend with a sensitive matter, Harlan replied casually. Involving federal agents, from what I hear. Harlan met her gaze evenly. Corporate espionage concerns. Nothing that would interest family court. Unless it involved parties to a custody case. Judge Monroe remarked, her expression unreadable. For a moment, the air between them hummed with unspoken understanding. Purely coincidental, I assure you, Harlan finally said. Judge Monroe nodded slowly. Of course. Good day, Mr. Mercer. At noon, Harlan picked up Theo from Bethany's house. The boy seemed subdued, clutching his backpack tightly. Looking forward to our weekend? Harlan asked as they drove away. Theo shrugged. Mom said you ruined our lake trip. Did she? Harlan kept his voice neutral. I'm sorry about that, but I have something special planned instead. How would you like to swim a rooftop pool with a view of the whole city? Theo's eyes widened. Really? Really? And afterward, we can have dinner at that dinosaur restaurant you like. By the time they reached the Westridge building, Theo's excitement had overcome his initial reluctance. Carson Westridge greeted them warmly, introducing his grandson Brady before whisking Harlan away to the boardroom. Inside, two serious men in dark suits waited alongside Carson and several board members. Mr. Mercer, these are Agents Delaney and Sawyer from the FBI Cyber Division, Carson explained. Harlan shook their hands. I understand you're investigating a potential data breach. Among other things, Agent Delaney replied grimly. We've been tracking Del Mar cartel movements into pharmaceutical IP theft for months. Your client's situation fits a pattern. The meeting proceeded efficiently, with Harlan guiding the discussion toward a controlled investigation that would protect Westridge's stock value while gathering evidence. As they finalized the approach, Carson's assistant entered with an urgent message. Mr. Steiger has arrived downstairs, she announced. Carson glanced at Harlan. Perfect timing. Shall we proceed as discussed? Harlan nodded. Agents, if you could remain here momentarily, Mr. Westridge, and I will greet Mr. Steiger and bring him up. In the lobby, Ryan's expression morphed from confidence to confusion when he spotted Harlan beside Carson. What the hell is this? Ryan demanded, stopping short. Mr. Steiger. Carson greeted him coldly. Thank you for coming. Mr. Mercer has been advising us on a security matter that appears to involve you. Ryan's eyes darted between them. I don't understand. Perhaps we should continue this conversation upstairs, Harlan suggested smoothly. Federal agents are waiting. The color drained from Ryan's face. Federal? This is some kind of setup. If you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to fear, Carson stated. Fuck this, Ryan spat, backing away. I'm not falling for whatever game you're playing, Mercer. As Ryan turned to leave, two security guards blocked his path. Mr. Westridge would appreciate your cooperation, sir. Ryan's panicked gaze found Harlan, who simply adjusted his tie calmly. Running would be unwise, Ryan. It tends to imply guilt. Trapped, Ryan had no choice but to follow them to the elevator. As the doors closed, he hissed at Harlan. Bethany was right about you. No, Harlan replied quietly. She wasn't nearly right enough. Chapter 8. Lake House Revelations. The following weekend, Bethany drove alone to Ryan's lake house, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. The past week had been a nightmare. Ryan was under investigation for corporate espionage, released on bail, but facing potential federal charges. His assets were frozen. The promised Westridge consulting fee had evaporated. And somehow, Harlan's fingerprints were all over it, though she couldn't prove anything. She needed time alone to think, to plan their next move. The lakefront property, Ryan's pride and joy, purchased with cash through an LLC to hide it from his previous divorce settlement, would provide the perfect refuge. As Bethany turned onto the private road leading to the house, her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Ms. Lafferty? A woman's crisp voice came through the speakers. This is Nurse Wilkins from Riverdale Palliative. I'm afraid I have difficult news. Your Aunt Theodora passed away an hour ago. Bethany pulled over, a complex mixture of grief and calculation washing over her. I understand. Thank you for letting me know. Mr. Winters, her attorney, asked to be notified immediately. He mentioned there would be a reading of the will tomorrow. So soon, it was Ms. Lafferty's explicit instruction. The reading will be at 3 p.m. at Mr. Winters' office. After ending the call, Bethany sat motionless, processing this new development. 20% of Theodore's estate would still be a substantial sum, enough perhaps to cover Ryan's legal expenses. A grim smile crossed her face. Perhaps things were finally turning in their favor. She continued to the lake house, the familiar sight of the rustic cabin usually bringing comfort. Today, however, something felt off. The door was unlocked, though Ryan insisted he'd secured everything before his last visit. Inside, nothing appeared disturbed, yet Bethany couldn't shake the sensation of intrusion. She moved through the rooms cautiously, checking closets and windows. In the master bedroom, she noticed Ryan's laptop on the nightstand. Strange, since he'd taken it to Philadelphia. Curious, she opened it. The screen came to life without requesting a password, another anomaly. The desktop was empty except for a single folder labeled for Bethany. Her pulse quickening, she clicked it open. Inside was a video file. She pressed play. The footage showed the very room she was sitting in, but from weeks earlier. Ryan entered with a woman Bethany recognized as his administrative assistant. What followed was an intimate encounter that left no doubt about their relationship. The timestamp indicated this had occurred during a weekend Ryan had claimed to be fishing with friends, while Bethany was caring for Theodora. Bethany's hand flew to her mouth. As the video continued, the conversation afterward became even more damning. "When are you going to leave her?" the woman asked, curled against Ryan's side. "Soon," Ryan promised. "Once the old lady dies and Bethany gets her inheritance, then we're good to go. You really think she'll give you access to all that money?" Ryan laughed. "She already added me to her accounts. Besides, she's completely blindsided by the custody battle with her ex, hasn't got a clue I've been moving her money into the offshore account." Bethany paused the video, her hands shaking. She checked her banking app and found her savings account nearly depleted. Over $200,000 gone, transferred in small increments over the past 3 months. Frantically, she searched through the laptop, finding detailed records of Ryan's dealings, the offshore account information, dates and amounts of transfers from her accounts, even emails plotting how to access Theodora's estate once it passed to Bethany. As the magnitude of the betrayal crashed over her, another file caught her attention: Westridge evidence. Inside were documents clearly stolen from the pharmaceutical company, along with communications to potential buyers, information that would devastate Ryan's defense against the federal charges. Bethany's phone rang again, Ryan this time. "Hey," she answered, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Where are you?" Ryan demanded. "At the lake house." "Where are you?" Listen carefully. Ryan's voice was tense. "Don't go inside. Just turn around and leave right now." "Too late," Bethany replied coldly. "I'm already looking at your laptop." Silence stretched across the line. "It's not what you think," Ryan finally said. "Really? Because it looks exactly like you've been sleeping with your assistant, stealing my money, and planning to leave me once you got your hands on Theodora's inheritance." "Bethany, save it," she cut him off. "I've seen everything. The videos, the transfers, the Westridge files. It's over, Ryan. Listen to me." Ryan's voice took on a desperate edge. "That laptop wasn't supposed to be there. Someone planted it. Think about it. Who would benefit from turning us against each other right now?" Bethany froze. "Harlan." "Exactly. He's setting us both up. The laptop is probably being tracked right now. Federal agents could be on their way to the lake house as we speak." Bethany looked around frantically. "What do I do?" "Close the laptop. Don't touch anything else. Get out of there now." As Bethany moved to comply, her phone pinged with a text message from an unknown number. "I've forwarded copies of all files to the FBI, Ms. Lafferty. You have approximately 20 minutes before they arrive. I suggest you use that time wisely." "Oh my God," Bethany whispered. "What?" Ryan demanded. She read him the message. "Fuck," Ryan exploded. "This is Harlan's doing. His military buddy Pascal. They're behind all of it. What do we do? Meet me at the bus station. Bring cash, whatever you can grab. We need to disappear for a while. What about Theo? Bethany asked, suddenly remembering her son. Ryan's voice hardened. We don't have time for that now. It's survival mode. Theo's with Harlan this weekend anyway. The casual dismissal of her child struck Bethany like a physical blow. In that moment, everything clarified with terrible clarity. Harlan hadn't just orchestrated their downfall. He'd revealed their true characters in the process. I have to go, she said quietly. I'll see you at the bus station in an hour, Ryan replied. No, Bethany said. You won't. She ended the call and sent a text to the unknown number. Tell Harlan I want to talk. On my terms. The reply came instantly. The coffee shop across from the courthouse. 30 minutes. Chapter 9. Final Judgment. The coffee shop was nearly empty when Bethany arrived. Harlan sat at a corner table, 2 cups steaming before him. He rose politely as she approached, gesturing to the chair across from him. You look tired, he observed as she sat down. Cut the bullshit, Bethany snapped. I know what you did. Harlan sipped his coffee calmly. Which part specifically? All of it. The custody hearing, Aunt Theodora's will, Ryan's federal investigation, the lake house setup. You've been orchestrating everything from the beginning. Orchestrating? Harlan raised an eyebrow. An interesting choice of words. It implies I created something from nothing. You manipulated evidence. Planted that laptop. Did I plant Ryan's infidelity? Harlan asked quietly. Did I force him to steal from you? To conspire against a dying woman? To endanger our son's health by removing his allergy information? Bethany flinched at the last accusation. That was Ryan's idea. He said it would strengthen our case if we could show you were paranoid about Theo's health. And you agreed. I made a mistake, Bethany admitted, her voice breaking slightly. Several mistakes. Harlan studied her, his expression unreadable. What do you want, Bethany? To make a deal. I have information the federal prosecutors will want about Ryan's other activities, his real connection to Del Mar. I can testify against him in exchange for immunity for myself. And she hesitated. Reconsideration of the custody arrangement. Harlan leaned back, regarding her coldly. You believe you deserve another chance with Theo? After everything you've done? I'm his mother, Bethany whispered. Being a mother is more than biology, Harlan replied. It's choices, priorities, sacrifices. I know that now. No, Harlan countered. You know you've lost. There's a difference. He placed a folder on the table between them. These are the terms. Non-negotiable. Bethany opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a complete custody modification granting Harlan full legal and physical custody of Theo. She would have supervised visitation twice monthly. Additionally, she would forfeit all claims to marital assets in exchange for Harlan arranging a plea deal with federal prosecutors. This is fair, Harlan finished for her. Considerably more than fair, given the circumstances. Tears welled in Bethany's eyes. I'll never see my son. You'll see him when it serves his interests, not yours, Harlan corrected. And only when you've demonstrated genuine reform. And if I refuse? Harlan's expression hardened. Then I stop protecting you. The evidence of your involvement in Ryan's schemes goes to prosecutors. Your knowledge of his corporate espionage. The altered medical records. The text discussing how to alienate Theo from me. Everything. Bethany stared at him, finally understanding the depth of the trap he'd constructed. You never intended to forgive me, did you? This was always your plan. Forgiveness requires remorse, Harlan replied. You've shown none until you were caught. As for planning, I simply created opportunities for your true character to reveal itself. And Ryan? Mr. Steiger made his own choices. His bail was revoked this morning when he failed to appear for a scheduled check-in. Border Patrol has been notified. Bethany's shoulders slumped in defeat. Theo will hate me. That depends entirely on you, Harlan said, sliding a pen across the table. Children are remarkably resilient when surrounded by stability and truth. After a long moment, Bethany signed the documents. As she rose to leave, she asked quietly, was any of it real? What we had? Harlan gathered the signed papers methodically. That's the wrong question, Bethany. What's the right one? whether it would have mattered to you if it was. Harlan stood. My attorney will contact you about the visitation schedule. The FBI expects your statement tomorrow morning. Outside the coffee shop, Pascal waited in his car. He rolled down the window as Harlan approached. All set. It's done, Harlan confirmed, sliding into the passenger's seat. That was quite a game of chess you played, Pascal observed as they pulled away. Harlan gazed out the window at Bethany's diminishing figure. Chess implies equal opponents following established rules. And that's not what this was? No, Harlan replied quietly. This was justice. At home, Harlan found Theo in the backyard, teaching himself to skateboard with determined concentration. Watching his son's focused expression, so similar to his own, Harlan felt the weight of the past months finally beginning to lift. Dad, Theo called, spotting him. Watch this. Harlan smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes for the first time in over a year. I'm watching, he called back. I'm right here. As Theo proudly demonstrated his newest trick, Harlan's phone buzzed with a text from Judge Monroe. Custody modification approved. Effective immediately. Harlan slipped the phone back into his pocket without replying. The time for looking backward was over. Whatever came next, recovery, rebuilding, perhaps even redemption for those who earned it, would unfold on his terms. For now, watching his son in the fading afternoon light was judgment enough. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Neighbor's Warning. Lucas Turner had always prided himself on his attention to detail. 12 years in Army intelligence had trained him to notice the smallest inconsistencies, the subtle changes that others overlooked. It was a skill that had kept him alive in 3 deployments and now served him well as a security consultant for corporate clients in Philadelphia. But somehow, he'd missed something happening in his own home. The morning started like any other Tuesday. Lucas finished his coffee while his daughter, Hannah, rushed around the kitchen gathering her backpack and lunch. At 16, she was a straight-A student at Riverside High, captain of the debate team, and generally the kind of kid who made parenting look easy. His wife, Vivian, had left earlier for her nursing shift at Pennsylvania Hospital. Dad, I'm going to be late for first period, Hannah called out, already halfway out the door. Drive safe, kiddo, Lucas shouted back, watching through the window as she backed her used Honda Civic out of the driveway. He was locking the front door when Randolph Lynch, their neighbor of 5 years, called out from his porch. Randy was a retired postal worker who spent most of his days tending his garden and keeping an eye on the neighborhood, sometimes too close an eye. Morning, Lucas, Randy said, walking over with his coffee mug. His tone carried something odd, something that made Lucas's instincts prickle. Morning, Randy. Everything all right? Randy glanced back at Lucas's house, then lowered his voice. Is your daughter skipping school again? Lucas felt his jaw tighten. Excuse me, I don't mean to pry, but, well, I see her home during the day. A lot. Thought you should know. Randy, Hannah goes to school every day. I drop her off or watch her leave myself. The older man shifted uncomfortably. I'm just telling you what I see. Middle of the day, I see movement in that upstairs window. Saw someone in Hannah's room yesterday around noon. Figured it was her. Lucas forced a smile, though his mind was already racing. Maybe you saw Vivian. She works rotating shifts. Maybe, Randy said, but he didn't sound convinced. Just thought you should know. These days, kids are good at hiding things. As Lucas drove to his office downtown, he couldn't shake the conversation. Randy was many things, nosy, opinionated, occasionally annoying, but he wasn't a liar. And he'd been specific. Hannah's room, middle of the day, multiple sightings. But it was impossible. Lucas had personally installed a top-tier security system on their house 2 years ago. Motion sensors, cameras on all entry points, alerts sent directly to his phone. Nothing had triggered, unless someone knew how to bypass it. At his desk, Lucas pulled up his home security app. He scrolled through the logs from the past week. Everything appeared normal. Vivian leaving for work at 5:47 a.m., Hannah departing at 7:23 a.m., Lucas at 8:15 a.m. The system armed automatically 30 seconds after the last person left. No alerts, no triggered sensors, no unauthorized entry. He checked the camera footage anyway, fast-forwarding through hours of empty rooms. Nothing. The house remained still and quiet throughout the day. But Randy's words nagged at him. Lucas had learned in the military that the absence of evidence wasn't evidence of absence. A good operator knew how to move without leaving traces. He called Riverside High's attendance office. "Hi, this is Lucas Turner, Hannah Turner's father. I need to verify her attendance for the past week." "One moment, Mr. Turner." A pause, keyboard clicking. Hannah's record shows perfect attendance for the semester. She's currently in her 4th period class. Lucas thanked her and hung up. So Hannah was definitely at school, which meant either Randy was mistaken or someone else was in their house. That night at dinner, Lucas watched Hannah carefully. She seemed normal, complaining about her calculus teacher, excited about an upcoming debate tournament, texting her friends between bites. "Hey, Han, you haven't been coming home during lunch or anything, right?" Lucas asked casually. Hannah looked up, confused. "What? No. Why would I? We have a closed campus. Just asking. Mr. Lynch mentioned seeing someone in your room during the day." Hannah rolled her eyes. He probably saw his own reflection or something. "That man watches our house like a hawk." She returned to her phone, completely unconcerned. Vivian squeezed Lucas's hand. "Honey, maybe Randy's just bored. You know how he gets." Maybe. But Lucas's instincts, honed through years of threat assessment, were screaming that something was wrong. After Vivian and Hannah went to bed, Lucas sat in the dark living room, thinking. Someone with the skills to bypass his security system wasn't a random burglar. They had knowledge, training. They knew the house layout, the system's blind spots. They had been in his home, in his daughter's room. The thought made his blood run cold. Lucas pulled out his laptop and began reviewing every detail of their lives. Who had access to their house? Who knew their schedules? Who had the technical knowledge to defeat a professional-grade security system? The list was short. Too short. At 2 a.m., Lucas made a decision. He would find out who was violating his home, and when he did, they would regret ever stepping foot in the Turner house. He just needed proof. Chapter 2. The Discovery. Lucas didn't sleep. Instead, he spent the night planning his surveillance operation like he was back in Baghdad, tracking insurgent cells. The next morning, he went through his normal routine: coffee, breakfast with Hannah, goodbye kiss for Vivian. He left the house at 8:15 a.m. exactly as always, climbed into his SUV, and drove away. But 2 blocks later, he circled back, parking 3 streets over in front of a small park. He grabbed his surveillance pack from the trunk, a habit from his Army days, always keeping gear ready, and jogged through the backyards, approaching his house from the rear. The security system was Lucas's own design. He knew every sensor, every camera angle, every blind spot he'd deliberately programmed in. A security system with no vulnerabilities was suspicious. A system with predictable, exploitable weaknesses was a trap waiting to be sprung. He entered through the basement window, one of those deliberate blind spots, and moved silently through his own home. The house was completely still. Lucas checked every room on the ground floor. Empty. He climbed the stairs, each step placed carefully to avoid creaks. Nothing in the hallway. Nothing in the master bedroom. Hannah's room appeared untouched. Her bed was made, Vivian's insistence. Her desk organized, posters of her favorite bands on the walls. Lucas moved to the closet, then hesitated. If Randy had seen someone in this room, and they'd bypassed the security system, they were good. Which meant they might have counter-surveillance habits. They might be watching for signs of discovery. So Lucas did something unexpected. Instead of staking out from a safe distance, he slid under Hannah's bed, a narrow space he barely fit into, dust bunnies tickling his nose. From here, he had a direct view of the bedroom door and window. If someone was coming, he'd be in the last place they'd expect. The hardwood floor was uncomfortable, and the position reminded him of too many long surveillance ops in hostile territory. But Lucas had patience. He'd once spent 18 hours motionless in a crawl space in Kandahar, waiting for a high-value target. He could wait. At 10:47 a.m., Lucas heard it, the distinctive beep of the security system being disarmed. The front door opening. Someone had the code. Footsteps in the foyer. Not trying to be particularly quiet, but moving with purpose. Then more footsteps. Multiple people. Lucas's hand instinctively went to his hip, where he'd once carried a sidearm. Now it found only his phone, set to silent, recording audio. The footsteps climbed the stairs. 2 people, maybe 3. They were talking in low voices. Same as always. In and out, 30 minutes max. A woman's voice, young. Familiar somehow. I still say this is risky. What if someone comes home? A man's voice. Deeper, older. Definitely familiar. They won't. I know their schedules perfectly. Trust me. The voices were right outside Hannah's room now. Lucas's muscles tensed, his body coiled like a spring, years of combatives training ready to explode into action if needed. The door opened. 3 people entered. Lucas could only see their feet and lower legs from his position under the bed, but it was enough. Black boots expensive. Designer jeans. A woman. Work boots, paint-stained. Contractor pants. A man. Sneakers, newer. Another man, younger by the gate. They moved around the room with disturbing familiarity. Package should be in the usual spot, the woman said. Lucas heard a drawer open. Hannah's desk drawer. What the hell were they taking from his daughter's room? Got it, the younger man said. 3 kilos, just like Luther said. Lucas's blood turned to ice. Drugs. They were using his house as a drug distribution point. Perfect, the woman said. Now drop off the cash and the next shipment. Same routine. The older man's voice. This whole setup still makes me nervous, Jamie. Using a family's house. It's brilliant, and you know it, the woman, Jamie, interrupted. No one suspects a nice suburban house. Security systems on a predictable pattern. We bypass it, do the swap, and we're gone. Been working for 3 months without a hitch. 3 months. They've been violating his home, putting his daughter at risk for 3 months. Lucas recognized the voices now, and the realization hit him like a physical blow. Jamie Doherty, Vivian's younger sister, and one of the men was Luther Lambert, Jamie's boyfriend of 2 years. The other must be Luther's brother, Merle, a known associate of some very dangerous people in South Philly. His sister-in-law was running drugs through his house. Lucas remained perfectly still as they completed their exchange. He memorized every word, every detail, his mind already formulating a plan. They thought they were smart, using his home as cover. They had no idea who they were dealing with. After 30 minutes, they left, resetting the security system with what must have been a clone code. Lucas waited another 20 minutes before sliding out from under the bed. He checked Hannah's desk drawer. Inside, hidden behind school supplies, was a false bottom, one he'd never noticed. A professional installation. The drawer was empty now, but Lucas could see residue. He carefully collected samples with evidence bags from his surveillance kit. His phone had captured every word of the conversation. But Lucas didn't call the police. Not yet. Jamie had made this personal the moment she chose his home, his daughter's room, as her distribution point. She put Hannah at risk. She betrayed Vivian's trust. And Luther Lambert. Lucas knew that name from his consulting work. Luther ran with the Tanner crew, mid-level dealers who'd recently been expanding their territory. Dangerous men who didn't hesitate to use violence. If Lucas went to the police now, Jamie would lawyer up, probably get a light sentence. Luther would make bail and disappear. And worst of all, these people knew where he lived. They knew his family schedule. If they thought Lucas was a threat, retaliation wasn't just possible, it was likely. No, this required a different approach. Lucas had spent 12 years learning how to dismantle enemy operations from the inside, how to turn an adversary's strengths into weaknesses, how to make them destroy themselves. Jamie and Luther had no idea they'd just declared war on someone who'd made a career out of winning unwinnable fights. But they were about to find out. Chapter 3, Gathering Intelligence. Lucas spent the next 3 days becoming invisible in his own life. He went to work, came home, played the perfect husband and father. but every spare moment was dedicated to reconnaissance. He learned everything about Jamie Doherty. Vivian's younger sister was 28, a college dropout who'd bounced between jobs and boyfriends for years. Vivian had always made excuses for her: difficult childhood, bad influences, just needed to find her path. Lucas had tolerated Jamie for his wife's sake, even helped her out financially a few times. That generosity had been a mistake. Now Lucas understood how Jamie knew their security code. Vivian had given it to her 6 months ago when Jamie house sat during their anniversary trip. She'd apparently studied the system carefully, found the exploitable patterns Lucas had deliberately designed to lure in sophisticated intruders, patterns Jamie had then shared with Luther. Luther Lambert was a different animal entirely. 34, with a record including assault, possession with intent to distribute, and suspected involvement in 2 unsolved shootings. He ran a distribution network across 3 neighborhoods, using violence and intimidation to maintain his territory. His older brother Merle was the muscle, 6'2", 240, known for putting people in the hospital. The Lambert brothers worked for someone bigger. Lucas's corporate security contacts helped him piece together the structure. The Tanner organization, run by Daryl Tanner, controlled drug distribution across South Philadelphia. Tanner was careful, insulated, rarely directly linked to street-level operations. Jamie and Luther were small fish in a big pond, but they were the fish who'd invaded Lucas's home. On Thursday evening, Lucas waited until Vivian was asleep, then drove to a storage unit he maintained across town. Inside were items from his military days, equipment he'd been allowed to keep or had acquired through channels that didn't ask questions. He pulled out a sophisticated surveillance setup. Wireless cameras smaller than quarters, audio bugs that could transmit for weeks, GPS trackers with magnetic mounts, and a signal interceptor that would capture phone calls and texts within a 50-foot radius. By Friday, Lucas had a complete picture of Jamie and Luther's operation. They ran a mid-level distribution network, moving product from Tanner suppliers to street dealers. The genius of using Lucas's house was that it was in a completely different neighborhood from their usual territory, a perfect dead drop that no one would associate with drug trafficking. Jamie arrived every Tuesday and Thursday at 10:45 a.m., like clockwork. Luther or Merle would meet her with product going one direction and cash going the other. They'd modified Hannah's desk drawer themselves during one of Jamie's visits months ago. The operation was clever, but it had weaknesses. Lucas identified them methodically. Weakness 1. They'd grown comfortable, predictable. Same days, same times, same procedures. Weakness 2. Jamie trusted that family loyalty would protect her. She'd never considered that Lucas might discover the operation. Weakness 3. Luther and Merle were careful about avoiding police attention, but sloppy about operational security. They used the same phones, followed the same routes, met at the same locations. Weakness 4. The drugs moved through Lucas's house were valuable, street value around $90,000 per delivery. Luther was accountable to Tanner for that product. Weakness 5. Everyone involved assumed Lucas was just another civilian, a corporate consultant with no real skills beyond reading security reports. They had no idea what he was capable of. On Saturday, Lucas took Hannah to her debate tournament and watched her destroy her opponents with logic and evidence. She reminded him why he was doing this. Not for revenge. Revenge was emotional, sloppy. This was about protection, about ensuring his family was safe. That night, he finally told Vivian, "Not everything, but enough. I need to talk to you about Jamie," Lucas said as they sat on the back porch. Vivian looked up from her wine. "What about her? She's been coming to our house while we're at work, with her boyfriend Luther and his brother." Vivian's face registered confusion, then worry. "What? Why would?" "They're using Hannah's room as a distribution point for drugs. They modified her desk, bypassed our security system. It's been going on for 3 months." The color drained from Vivian's face. "No, Lucas, that can't." Jamie wouldn't. "I have audio recordings, video, physical evidence." Lucas kept his voice calm, factual. "I know this is hard to hear." Vivian sat in stunned silence, processing. Then tears came. "My sister? In our home? Around our daughter? Lucas put his arm around her. Hannah's never been in danger. They only come when everyone's gone. But yes, we have to call the police. Right now. No. Vivian pulled back, staring at him. What do you mean, no? Lucas had prepared for this conversation. If we call the police, Jamie gets arrested, probably makes bail. Luther definitely makes bail. He's got money and lawyers. And then what? They know we turned them in. They know where we live. Luther runs with dangerous people, Vivian. People who retaliate. So we just let them? No. We handle this differently. I have a plan that ensures they can't hurt us, can't come back, and face real consequences. But I need you to trust me. Vivian looked at her husband, really looked at him. She'd met Lucas 12 years ago, after he'd left the army. She knew about his deployments, his decorations, the nightmares he sometimes still had. She'd seen him handle threats before with a calm, calculated precision that was both reassuring and sometimes frightening. What are you going to do? She asked quietly. Make sure our family is safe. Permanently. She held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, I trust you. But Lucas, promise me you'll be careful. Always am, he said, though they both knew that wasn't quite true. What Vivian didn't know, what Lucas didn't tell her, was that his plan went far beyond simply stopping Jamie and Luther. He was going to dismantle their entire operation, turn them against each other, and ensure that when they fell hard enough that getting back up would be impossible. On Sunday, Lucas made his first move. He cloned Luther's phone using equipment from his security consulting kit, gaining access to every call, text, and email. Within hours, he had the entire network mapped. Luther's dealers, suppliers, drop points, and most importantly, his communication with Daryl Tanner. Luther was skimming. Small amounts, carefully hidden in the accounting, but definitely skimming. It would be invisible to casual observation, but obvious if someone knew where to look. Lucas smiled. He now had leverage on Luther, but he needed more. He needed to make them destroy themselves. Chapter 4. Setting the Trap. Monday morning, Lucas went to work and acted like everything was normal. But his real work was happening on encrypted networks and through carefully placed surveillance equipment. He'd learned in military intelligence that the best operations were the ones where the enemy never saw you coming. You didn't just defeat them, you made them defeat themselves. Jamie and Luther's next scheduled drop was Tuesday at 10:45 a.m. Lucas planned to be there, but not under the bed this time. This time, he was springing a trap. At 9 p.m. Monday night, Lucas received a text on the phone he'd cloned from Luther's device. It was from Daryl Tanner himself. Meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m. Warehouse. Numbers don't match. Explain. Lucas's pulse quickened. Tanner had noticed the discrepancies in Luther's accounting. This was earlier than Lucas had anticipated, but he could work with it. He quickly reviewed the data he'd collected on Luther's operation. The skimming had been going on for 6 weeks, about $15,000 total, carefully taken in small amounts from different transactions. Not enough to notice immediately, but over time, it added up. Luther responded, "We'll bring everything. Books are clean. Someone's trying to set me up. Tanner, better be. Don't be late." Lucas smiled in the darkness of his office. Luther was scared. Scared people made mistakes. Using a spoof number, Lucas sent a text to Merle Lambert pretending to be one of their street dealers. "Cops been asking questions about the Turner House drop. Think we got heat. Should we move the Tuesday delivery?" He watched through his monitoring setup as Merle's phone lit up. Merle immediately called Luther. "We got a problem," Merle said, his voice tight with tension. "Cops might be onto the house." Luther's response was angry. "What? How?" "Text from Rico. Says cops been asking about the address." "That's impossible. Place is clean. Been working perfect for months." "So what do we do?" "Tanner's already breathing down our necks about the money. We can't afford heat from cops too." Luther was silent for a moment. Lucas could almost hear the wheels turning. "We do the drop anyway," Luther finally said. "We can't miss it. Products already allocated to dealers. But we go in hard and fast. 10 minutes max. And we bring insurance." "What kind of insurance?" "The kind that makes sure if this is a setup, we walk away clean." Lucas didn't like the sound of that. Insurance, in Luther's world, usually meant weapons. This was escalating faster than he'd anticipated. He immediately adjusted his plan. At 6 a.m. Tuesday, Lucas left for work as usual. But instead of going to his office, he drove to a coffee shop 3 blocks from his house and set up his mobile surveillance station in his SUV. From here, he had access to the cameras he'd hidden throughout his house. Not the obvious security cameras that Jamie and Luther knew about, but new ones, virtually invisible, placed over the weekend while Vivian took Hannah shopping. At 10:30 a.m., a black Escalade pulled up 2 streets over. Luther and Merle got out, both visibly tense. Lucas zoomed in with his telephoto camera. Both men were armed. He could see the bulge of pistols under their jackets. This was bad. Lucas had wanted to catch them, expose them, turn them against each other. But if they came in armed and paranoid, someone could get hurt. He picked up his phone and called 911. 911, what's your emergency? I'd like to report a potential break-in in progress. 2 armed men just parked near my house, 1247 Riverside Drive. I'm out of town, but my security cameras show them approaching. They appear to be carrying weapons. Stay on the line, sir. Officers are being dispatched. I'll need to hang up. Bad signal where I am. But please hurry. My family's not home, but I'm worried about my neighbors. Lucas hung up. Police response time in this neighborhood was typically 8 to 12 minutes. Luther and Merle said they'd be in and out in 10 minutes. It was going to be close. At 10:43 a.m., Jamie's Honda pulled into the driveway. She got out, looking nervous, checking the street repeatedly. Something had her spooked. Luther and Merle approached from their parking spot. The 3 of them stood in Lucas's driveway, talking. Lucas enhanced the audio from his directional microphone. Don't like this, Jamie was saying. Too much heat. Maybe we should postpone. Can't postpone, Luther snapped. I got Tanner meeting in 3 hours. I need this product moved and the cash in hand, or I'm screwed. What about the cops? Probably nothing, but we're prepared if it's not. They moved toward the house. Jamie entered the security code, and all 3 went inside. Lucas watched on his hidden cameras as they climbed the stairs to Hannah's room. His hands clenched into fists, seeing them in his daughter's space again, but he forced himself to stay calm. Emotional reactions got people killed. Jamie went straight to the desk drawer, pulling out packages wrapped in plastic. Luther counted them quickly while Merle watched the door, hand inside his jacket on his weapon. 3 kilos, like always, Jamie said. Now, give me the cash and the next shipment. Luther handed over a duffel bag. Count it later. We need to move. That's when they heard the sirens. Lucas watched their faces change from focused to panicked in an instant. What the hell? Luther spun toward the window. 2 police cruisers were pulling up outside, lights flashing. It's a setup. Merle yanked out his pistol. Someone ratted. Put that away. Jamie hissed. If they see guns. Everyone stay calm, Luther ordered, but his own hand was on his weapon. We don't know they're here for us. A voice boomed through a megaphone outside. This is the Philadelphia police. We received a report of armed intruders. Anyone inside, come out with your hands visible. Luther's face went white. He turned to Jamie with fury in his eyes. You set us up. You call the cops. What? No, I would never. Then how'd they know we were armed? How'd they know to come right when we're here? The truth dawned on Jamie's face. Lucas. Oh my God, Lucas knows. Your brother-in-law. Merle kept his gun pointed at the door. How would he? He's not just some consultant. He was Army intelligence. If he figured out we were using his house. Luther grabbed Jamie by the arm. Did you tell him anything? No, I swear. I've been careful. Downstairs, someone was knocking on the door. Police! Open up. Lucas watched the scene unfold, his mind racing. This wasn't going exactly as planned. He'd wanted them caught with the drugs, but the weapons changed everything. If this went violent, he made a decision and called 911 again. This is Lucas Turner. I called about the break-in at 1247 Riverside. I'm accessing my security cameras remotely. There are 3 people inside. One is my sister-in-law, Jamie Doherty. The 2 men are Luther and Merle Lambert. They're armed but surrounded. Please, I don't want anyone hurt. Jamie's made some bad choices, but she's family. The operator relayed the information. Lucas could hear it being passed to the officers on scene through their radios on his police scanner. Inside the house, Luther was making calculations. We're trapped. Cops outside, drugs in hand, armed. We're looking at serious time. Unless, Merle said slowly, we had a hostage. Jamie backed away. Don't even think about it. She's right, Luther said, but his voice was uncertain. That only makes it worse. A new voice came through the megaphone. Jamie Doherty, this is Sergeant Wes Daniels. Your brother-in-law Lucas called us. He says you're family, and he doesn't want anyone hurt. Neither do we. Come out peacefully. We can work this out. Jamie looked at Luther and Merle. He's given me a chance. Us a chance. If we go out now, maybe nothing, Luther snarled. We're caught. With product. With weapons. Your brother-in-law screwed us, and you're worried about chances? But Lucas could see Luther's resolve cracking. He was a mid-level dealer, not a hardened criminal. The reality of a standoff with police was hitting him. Lucas made another call, this time directly to the police command on scene, using his corporate security credentials that gave him access to law enforcement channels. This is Lucas Turner, security consultant. I have audio and video surveillance of the interior. The suspects are in the northeast bedroom, second floor. They're scared, arguing amongst themselves. I believe they'll surrender if given the opportunity. Mr. Turner, we appreciate the intel, but you need to stay clear. Understand. But Sergeant, I'm former Army intelligence. I know how to read people. Luther Lambert is the leader, and he's calculating odds right now. If you offer him a way out that doesn't involve violence, he'll take it. His brother Merle is more volatile, but he follows Luther's lead. And Jamie, she's in over her head. She'll surrender first if encouraged. There was a pause. Noted. We'll handle it from here. Lucas watched as the police strategy shifted. Instead of demanding they come out, Sergeant Daniels' voice became conversational. Luther, I know you're thinking this through. Smart guy like you knows the math. Right now, you're looking at possession with intent. Serious, but manageable with good lawyers. You start adding charges, weapons, assault on officers, kidnapping if you do something stupid with Jamie, and you're looking at decades. Not years. Decades. Is that worth it? Inside the bedroom, Lucas saw Luther's shoulders slump. Merle was still tense, but Luther was breaking. Your brother-in-law doesn't want to press charges for the break-in, Daniels continued. He just wants his house back. You walk out now, nice and easy, we can maybe work with that. But you force our hand, and all bets are off. Luther looked at the drugs on the bed, then at his brother, then at Jamie. This is on you, he said to Jamie. Your family. Your problem. Then he pulled out his pistol, ejected the magazine, and set it on the floor. Merle, after a moment's hesitation, did the same. We're coming out, Luther shouted. Don't shoot. Lucas exhaled. No bloodshed. That was critical, because the real game was just beginning. As police brought Jamie, Luther, and Merle out in handcuffs, Lucas watched from his SUV 3 blocks away. The drugs were being inventoried, the weapons secured, the suspects being read their rights. But this wasn't the end. This was just the opening move. Because in 2 hours, Luther was supposed to meet with Daryl Tanner and explain the discrepancies in his accounting. Except now, Luther wouldn't be there, and the 3 kilos of Tanner's product would be in police evidence lockup. Tanner was going to be very interested in what happened to his distribution network, and Lucas was going to make sure Tanner's attention went exactly where Lucas wanted it. Chapter 5. Turning the Screws. Lucas sat in a parking garage overlooking the police station, monitoring multiple phone lines through his intercept equipment. Jamie, Luther, and Merle were inside being processed, and the real operation was about to begin. At 1:47 p.m., Luther's lawyer arrived, a slick defense attorney named Gerard Pearson who specialized in drug cases. Lucas recognized him from his corporate security work. Pearson was expensive and effective, which meant Luther had resources backing him. Resources that would evaporate once Lucas was done. At 2:15 p.m., Luther missed his meeting with Daryl Tanner. Lucas watched through the clone phone as angry texts started coming through. Tanner, where are you? 10 minutes later, answer your phone. Now, at 2:45 p.m., you have 1 hour to explain what happened, or we have problems. Lucas waited until exactly 3:30 p.m., then sent a text from an anonymous burner phone to Tanner's number, a number he'd extracted from Luther's communications. Your boy Luther got popped. 3 keys of your product in evidence. Check the news. He attached a link to the local news story that had just posted online. 3 arrested in suburban drug bust. Within 30 seconds, Tanner called the number. Lucas didn't answer. Through his monitoring of police communications, Lucas learned that Luther, Merle, and Jamie were all being held pending arraignment. Luther's lawyer was negotiating, but the charges were serious: possession with intent to distribute, criminal trespass, weapons charges for Luther and Merle. Jamie was the weak link. Lucas could see it in the police interview footage he'd obtained through his security industry contacts. She was terrified, crying, asking about deals. At 4 p.m., Lucas made a call to Gerard Pearson's office from another burner phone, using voice modulation software. "Mr. Pearson, you represent Luther Lambert. Who is this?" "Someone who knows Luther's been stealing from Daryl Tanner. About $15,000 over the past 6 weeks. Tanner's already suspicious. When he finds out Luther lost 3 kilos of product to the cops, he's going to do the math. Your client has maybe 48 hours before Tanner decides Luther's a liability. I don't know what you are. Check Luther's books. The money's hidden in false receipts from his cousin's auto shop. When Tanner audits, and he will audit, it'll take him about an hour to find it. Luther's going to need protection. Witness protection. Tell him to think about cooperation." Lucas hung up before Pearson could respond. The seed was planted. Luther would soon realize he had enemies on both sides now, the law and his own organization. That evening, Lucas visited the police station. Sergeant Daniels met him in a conference room. "Mr. Turner, I appreciate your cooperation today. Your surveillance footage is solid evidence. Happy to help, Sergeant. I just want my home back. About that, your sister-in-law is asking to speak with you." Lucas had expected this. "I'll talk to her." Briefly, Jamie was brought to a visitor room, still and holding clothes, her eyes red from crying. When she saw Lucas, she stood up. "Lucas, I'm so sorry. I never meant." "Sit down, Jamie." His voice was calm, but carried an edge that made her sink back in her chair. "You used our home, Hannah's room. For months, you put my daughter at risk. She was never at risk. We were careful. We only came when you brought armed criminals into my house." Lucas leaned forward. "Luther and Merle came in carrying pistols today, in my daughter's bedroom. So don't tell me about risk." Jamie's face crumpled. "I didn't know they bring guns." "That was Luther's idea after." She stopped. "After what?" "After someone spooked them about cops watching the house." She looked at Lucas with dawning understanding. "That was you. You set this whole thing up. I made sure you got caught before someone got hurt. There's a difference. Please, Lucas. I know I screwed up, but if I cooperate, if I testify against Luther, can you help me? Talk to the prosecutor?" Lucas pretended to consider it. "That depends. What do you know about Luther's organization? About Daryl Tanner?" Over the next 30 minutes, Jamie told Lucas everything. Locations, names, procedures, the whole distribution network. She was desperate to reduce her charges, willing to give up anyone to save herself. Lucas recorded every word on his phone, hidden in his jacket pocket. When she finished, Lucas stood. "I'll talk to my lawyer. See what can be done." "Thank you, Lucas." "Thank you. And please, tell Vivian I'm sorry. Tell her. Vivian doesn't want to hear from you right now. Maybe ever. You betrayed her trust." As Lucas left the station, he had everything he needed. Jamie had just given him a complete map of a criminal organization. Combined with the evidence from Luther's phone and his own surveillance, Lucas could dismantle the entire Tanner network. But he wasn't going to give it to the police. Not yet. He was going to use it as ammunition in a war he was about to start. That night, Lucas created a comprehensive dossier: financial records, supplier contacts, distribution routes, names of corrupt officials taking payoffs, locations of drug houses, everything. He organized it into a professional intelligence report, the kind he used to create for military operations. Then he made copies, multiple copies, encrypted and stored in different locations. At 11 p.m., Lucas made another anonymous call, this time to Ramon Haley, Tanner's biggest competitor in the Philadelphia drug trade. Haley ran operations in North Philly and had been trying to expand into Tanner's territory for years. "Mr. Haley, you don't know me, but I have information about Daryl Tanner's operation. Weaknesses in his distribution network, locations of his stash houses, financial records showing which cops and officials he's paying off. Who the hell is this? Someone who wants to see Tanner's empire crumble. I'm sending you a sample of the intelligence. If you're interested in the rest, we can negotiate terms. Lucas sent over one document, the location and schedule of one of Tanner's major distribution points. Enough to be valuable, not enough to give away the whole game. Why would you help me? Haley asked suspiciously. Because Tanner made a mistake. He targeted the wrong person's family. Now I'm returning the favor. You want his territory? I'm giving you the keys to take it. All I ask in return is that when this is over, you remember whose neighborhood I live in, and you keep your business far away from it. There was a long pause. Send me the rest of the intel. I'll look it over. When I see you make a move on the location I just sent, I'll know you're serious. Then we'll talk about the rest. Lucas hung up. Within 24 hours, Haley's crew hit the distribution point Lucas had identified. They took $200,000 in product and cash. Tanner's organization was suddenly under attack from a rival who had impossibly detailed intelligence. Lucas monitored Tanner's communications through the network he'd penetrated via Luther's phone. The organization was in chaos. Tanner didn't know how Haley had gotten the intel, whether there was a rat in his organization, whether Luther had talked from jail. The paranoia was exactly what Lucas wanted. On Thursday, Lucas sent Tanner's financial records, the one showing exactly how much Luther had stolen, to Tanner's second-in-command, Patrick Rice, with a simple message. Luther's been skimming. Check the books. And ask yourself why he got caught so conveniently at the exact moment he owed you an explanation. Patrick would do the math. Luther had motive to set up the bust, destroy the evidence of his theft, claim he got busted in a random sting, avoid Tanner's wrath. Except the paranoia would work both ways. Luther, sitting in jail, would soon hear about Haley's attack on Tanner's operations. He'd realize someone had fed Haley intelligence, and there were only a few people who had that level of detailed knowledge. Luther would suspect Tanner of setting him up. Tanner would suspect Luther of working with Haley. Jamie would be caught in the middle, terrified and trying to save herself. They would destroy each other, and Lucas wouldn't have to do anything except watch. By Friday morning, Lucas's lawyer contacted the prosecutor with an offer. Lucas wouldn't press breaking and entering charges against his sister-in-law in exchange for Jamie's full cooperation against Luther and Merle Lambert. The prosecutor agreed. Jamie was released on bail with an ankle monitor, terrified and isolated, cut off from her co-conspirators, and facing serious time if she didn't cooperate. Luther and Merle, meanwhile, remained in custody. Their lawyer was scrambling, trying to negotiate deals, but Tanner's organization had gone silent. No bail money, no support, nothing. They were being cut off because Tanner didn't support snitches. And the rumors Lucas was carefully spreading made it seem like Luther was cooperating to save himself. On Saturday, Lucas finally visited Luther in jail. He paid for a private attorney conference room, presenting himself as a concerned citizen who wanted to understand what happened. Luther came in wearing orange, looking exhausted and angry. "The hell do you want?" Luther growled. "To give you a chance to survive," Lucas said calmly. "In about 72 hours, Daryl Tanner is going to decide whether you're worth keeping alive. Right now, his operation is under attack. Someone, probably Ramon Haley, has detailed intelligence about his network. Products being stolen, stash houses getting hit, cops suddenly showing up at exactly the right times. Tanner thinks he has a rat." Luther's face went pale. "I didn't. I know you didn't. But Tanner doesn't. He knows you were skimming money. He knows you lost 3 kilos to the cops. He knows you're in custody facing serious charges. From his perspective, you look like a man who'd cut a deal. I'm not cooperating. Tell him. I'm not your messenger. I'm your wake-up call." Lucas leaned forward. "You have one chance to get out of this alive. You testify against Tanner. You give the feds everything. Distribution network, supplier contacts, money laundering, all of it. You go into witness protection. You disappear. Because if you don't, Tanner will make sure you don't make it to trial." Luther stared at him. "Who the hell are you? You're not just some security consultant. I'm the man whose home you violated, whose daughter you put at risk. And now I'm the man who's tearing down everyone connected to that decision. Daryl Tanner, Ramon Haley, your whole network. When I'm done, the streets you ran will be crawling with federal agents and rival crews. You want to survive? You cooperate. That's your only play. Lucas stood to leave. Wait, Luther said. You set all this up. The bust, Haley's attacks, everything. This is you. Lucas paused at the door. I'm just a concerned citizen who got caught in the crossfire of your world. But if that world burns down around you, I won't lose sleep. He left Luther sitting there, the weight of reality crushing down on him. By Monday, Luther's lawyer contacted the FBI. Luther wanted to make a deal. Chapter 6, Controlled Demolition. The FBI moved fast once Luther started talking. Special Agent Jared Howard, a 20-year veteran of the Bureau's Organized Crime Division, took over the case. Lucas had worked with Howard 3 years ago on a corporate espionage case and knew he was thorough and ruthless when it came to dismantling criminal organizations. Lucas made sure Howard got a copy of his intelligence dossier, carefully sanitized to remove any indication of how Lucas had obtained it, presented as information gathered through corporate security channels during a routine home invasion investigation. Howard called Lucas personally. This is solid intel, better than anything we've gotten from informants. How does a security consultant get this level of detail? I'm very good at my job, Lucas said, and I had motivation. They used my house. Still, this is FBI-level analysis. You sure you didn't miss your calling? Did 12 years of it in the Army. This is just a different uniform. Howard laughed. Fair enough. Listen, with what you've provided and Luther's cooperation, we can take down the entire Tanner organization. We're talking RICO charges, 30-plus defendants. This is big. Just make sure my family stays safe when it goes down. Protective detail is already on your house. These guys don't know it was you who started the ball rolling. But Lucas knew better. Eventually, someone would connect the dots, which was why he was already 3 steps ahead. While the FBI built their case against Tanner, Lucas was orchestrating the final moves of his own operation. He'd identified every weakness in the criminal network, every point of leverage, every rivalry and grudge. And he was exploiting all of them simultaneously. Anonymous tips went to the DEA about Tanner's suppliers. Financial records landed on the desk of the IRS. Evidence of bribes reached internal affairs for 3 different police departments. Simultaneously, Lucas was feeding intelligence to Ramon Haley, watching as Haley's crews systematically dismantled Tanner's street operations. It was a controlled demolition, and Lucas was the demolition expert. On Tuesday, Jamie came to the house. Vivian had reluctantly agreed to see her, though Lucas made sure he was present. Jamie looked terrible, pale, thin, dark circles under her eyes. The ankle monitor was visible under her jeans. I'm so sorry, Jamie began, tears already flowing. I never meant for any of this. You put our daughter at risk, Vivian said coldly. You used our home for drug trafficking. For 3 months, Jamie. 3 months you smiled to our faces while. I know. I was desperate. Luther said it was safe, that no one would ever know. I needed the money, and he made it sound so easy. You chose money over family, Lucas said. Over Hannah's safety. That's not desperation. That's betrayal. Jamie collapsed into sobs. I'm cooperating with everything. The FBI, the prosecutor, all of it. I told them everything I know. My lawyer says if I testify, I might get probation instead of prison. Lucas, please, can you tell them I'm trying to make this right? Lucas exchanged a look with Vivian. His wife's face was hard, unforgiving. I'll speak to the prosecutor, Lucas said finally. But, Jamie, you need to understand something. Even if you avoid prison, you're not welcome here anymore. Not in our home. Not around Hannah. You made choices that broke this family. But we're sisters, Jamie pleaded to Vivian. You stopped being my sister when you decided drugs were more important than my child's safety, Vivian said quietly. Get out, Jamie, and don't come back. After Jamie left, Vivian broke down. Lucas held her while she cried, for the sister she'd lost, for the betrayal, for the violation of their home. She's facing years of looking over her shoulder, Vivian said between tears. Luther's people, Tanner's organization, they won't forget she cooperated. Neither will I, Lucas said. But she made her bed. We need to focus on protecting our family now. That night, Lucas received a call from an unknown number. He answered using his voice recording app. Mr. Turner? An older voice, smooth and controlled. Who's asking? Someone who appreciates good intelligence work. You've been quite busy. Lucas's blood ran cold. He recognized the voice from surveillance recordings. Daryl Tanner. I don't know what you're talking about. Please. I'm not stupid. Luther flips. My network gets hit from 3 directions simultaneously. My financial records end up with the IRS. And somehow Ramon Haley has better intel about my operation than my own people. That doesn't happen by accident. Someone orchestrated this. Your problem is with your organization, not me. My problem, Tanner said, his voice hardening, is that a civilian security consultant apparently decided to play at being some kind of vigilante. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A mid-level drug dealer whose entire operation is collapsing. The FBI has your financial records, your distribution network, your supplier contacts. Luther's testifying. Jamie's testifying. Half your crew is under surveillance, and the other half is getting poached by Haley. You're done, Tanner. It's just a matter of time. You think the FBI protects you? You think I can't reach you? I think you're smart enough to know that I'm not a target worth the consequences. I'm a decorated veteran with corporate security clients, including 2 Fortune 500 companies. I have surveillance footage of your people breaking into my home, threatening my family. You come after me, and every law enforcement agency in Pennsylvania will make your life their personal mission. Is that really how you want to spend your last months of freedom? There was a long silence. You don't know what you started, Tanner said finally. Yes, I do. I started the end of your organization, and I'll sleep just fine knowing it. Lucas hung up and immediately called Agent Howard. Tanner just threatened me directly. I recorded the call. Send it over. That's another charge we can add. Witness intimidation. Lucas forwarded the recording, then activated additional security protocols on his house. Motion sensors, panic buttons, direct links to 911 and Howard's direct line. He also moved Vivian and Hannah to a hotel for the next week, using a corporate security safe house. If Tanner was desperate enough to make threats, he might be desperate enough to act. But Lucas had planned for that too. On Wednesday, the FBI executed simultaneous raids on 18 locations connected to Tanner's organization. Arrests were made, millions in cash and drugs seized, financial records confiscated. The operation made national news. And in the chaos, something interesting happened. Daryl Tanner disappeared. His lawyer claimed he'd gone into hiding, fearing for his safety from rival organizations. But Lucas knew better. He'd been monitoring Tanner's communications, his movements, his resources. Tanner had run, taken what cash he could grab, and fled, which meant he was scared, desperate, and dangerous. On Thursday night, Lucas was in his SUV outside the hotel where Vivian and Hannah were staying when his phone pinged with an alert from his home security system. Someone was approaching the house. Lucas pulled up the camera feeds. 3 men, all armed, moving toward his back door. Professional movements coordinated. Tanner had sent a crew. Lucas smiled grimly and made 2 phone calls. The first to 911. Armed intruders breaking into 1247 Riverside Drive. I'm out of town, but my security system shows 3 men with weapons. The second to Agent Howard. Tanner just sent shooters to my house. You might want to be there when the cops arrive. Then Lucas activated a surprise he'd installed over the past week. A remotely triggered alarm system that sent 120 decibel sirens throughout the house, along with strobe lights in every room. On his camera feeds, he watched the 3 intruders panic as the house erupted in noise and light. They scattered, running for the back fence. But Lucas had planned for that too. He'd set up motion-activated cameras throughout the backyard, capturing clear footage of all 3 men. Police arrived in 4 minutes. The FBI showed up right behind them. 2 of the 3 intruders were caught within blocks. The third was identified from footage and arrested 6 hours later. All 3 had records. All 3 had connections to Tanner. And all 3 were now facing serious felony charges: burglary, criminal trespass, weapons violations, and conspiracy to commit assault. One of them, the one they caught first, started talking within an hour. Tanner had ordered the hit. Not to kill Lucas, but to send a message. Destroy the house. Make it clear what happened when someone interfered. It was exactly the evidence Agent Howard needed to add witness intimidation and conspiracy charges to Tanner's indictment. By Friday morning, federal marshals had tracked Tanner to a motel in Delaware. He was arrested trying to board a bus to Canada. The news coverage was extensive. Drug kingpin arrested after ordering hit on suburban home. Lucas's name was mentioned as the victim, which wasn't ideal, but it also made him untouchable now. Going after Lucas would bring down so much law enforcement attention that no one would dare. That evening, Agent Howard met Lucas at a coffee shop. "You played this perfectly," Howard said. "It's like you anticipated every move. I did 12 years of intelligence work. I know how to read patterns." This was more than reading patterns. This was orchestration. You didn't just react to what happened. You guided it. Made them all destroy each other. Lucas sipped his coffee. They destroyed themselves. I just made sure the right people were watching when it happened. Howard studied him. You know, the Bureau could use someone with your skills. We're always looking for analysts who understand criminal psychology. I'm happy consulting. Agent Howard. Less bureaucracy. Fair enough. Howard slid a folder across the table. This is the final tally. 37 arrests across the Tanner organization. RICO charges against 12 defendants, including Tanner himself. Conservative estimate is we've disrupted about $40 million in annual drug distribution. And it all started because they were dumb enough to use your house. What about Luther and Jamie? Luther's cooperating fully. He'll do minimal time, probably 5 years with credit for cooperation. Witness protection after that. Jamie's looking at probation and community service. She wasn't directly involved in distribution, just provided access. The judge will be lenient given her cooperation and family circumstances. And Tanner, 25 to life minimum, with the witness intimidation charges and the attempted hit on your house. He's never seeing freedom again. Lucas nodded slowly. Justice served, but not quite the way he'd envisioned. One more thing, Howard said. Ramon Haley. He's been awfully successful lately, hitting Tanner's operations with suspiciously accurate intelligence. You wouldn't know anything about that. I gave you everything I had, Agent Howard. That's what I thought. Because if someone was feeding intel to Haley, that would be a crime. And I'd hate to see a decorated veteran get caught up in something like that. Understandable. Howard stood. Well, Mr. Turner, thanks for your cooperation. And my advice? Take your family on a vacation. Somewhere far from Philadelphia. Let all this blow over. Good advice. I think I will. As Howard left, Lucas allowed himself a small smile. Tanner's organization was destroyed. Luther was contained. Jamie had learned an expensive lesson. His family was safe. But there was still one loose end. Ramon Haley had the rest of Lucas's intelligence dossier. And eventually, Haley would want something in return for staying away from Lucas's neighborhood. Lucas had already planned for that conversation. Because the real lesson from all this wasn't about revenge or justice. It was about leverage. About understanding that power came from information, preparation, and the willingness to do what others wouldn't. Lucas had spent 12 years learning those lessons in war zones around the world. Now he just finished teaching them to everyone who'd made the mistake of threatening his family. Chapter 7. The Final Player. 2 weeks after Tanner's arrest, life began returning to something resembling normal. Hannah was back at school, excited about being accepted to Penn State's honors program. Vivian had returned to work, though she still sometimes looked at their house with a mixture of violation and relief. The physical evidence of what had happened was gone. Lucas had replaced the modified desk drawer, upgraded the security system, and hired a professional cleaning service to make Hannah's room feel new again. But the consequences rippled through their lives in subtle ways. Jamie had pleaded guilty to accessory charges and received 3 years probation, 300 hours of community service, and mandatory drug counseling. She'd moved to Pittsburgh to live with an aunt, far from Philadelphia and the wreckage of her old life. Vivian had spoken to her once since the sentencing, a brief, painful conversation that ended with both sisters crying. Luther was in federal protective custody, preparing to testify in the RICO case against Tanner and a dozen other defendants. Merle had taken a plea deal, and was serving 8 years. And Tanner himself sat in a federal detention center, denied bail, facing a trial that would likely end with him dying in prison. Lucas should have felt satisfied. The threat was eliminated, his family safe, justice served. But he knew it wasn't over. On a Thursday evening, Lucas was working in his home office when an encrypted message appeared on his secure email, the one he used for his consulting business. "We should talk about our arrangement. Meet me tomorrow at 8 p.m. Details to follow." It was signed simply, R.H. Ramon Haley. Lucas had been expecting this. He'd given Haley intelligence worth millions of dollars in seized territory and product. Haley had used it to expand his operation into the vacuum left by Tanner's collapse. And now Haley wanted to discuss payment. The next message arrived an hour later with an address, a warehouse in North Philadelphia, deep in Haley's territory. Vivian noticed Lucas's tension at dinner. "Everything okay? Just work stuff. I have a meeting tomorrow night with a client." "Late meeting?" "It's a security consultation. Some people prefer after hours." It wasn't exactly a lie. But Lucas had learned during this whole operation that protecting Vivian meant not telling her everything. She knew about Jamie and Luther, about Tanner's organization. But she didn't know about Haley, about the intelligence Lucas had traded, about the criminal empire he'd helped build in exchange for his family's safety. That night, Lucas prepared like he was going on a combat patrol. He wore a concealed ballistic vest under his jacket, carried 2 phones, one regular, one encrypted, had a tracking device in his watch that would alert Agent Howard if Lucas didn't deactivate it within 4 hours. Left detailed files on his computer about Haley's organization, set to automatically email to the FBI if Lucas didn't log in by midnight. If Haley decided Lucas was a liability rather than an asset, Lucas would make sure his death meant Haley's arrest. At 7:45 p.m., Lucas drove into North Philadelphia. The neighborhood was a different world from Riverside. Boarded up buildings, graffiti, people on corners watching cars pass with predatory attention. The warehouse was in an industrial area, surrounded by chain-link fence topped with razor wire. 2 men stood outside, both obviously armed. Lucas parked and approached slowly, hands visible. "Lucas Turner." "I'm expected." One of the men spoke into a radio, then nodded. Inside, 2nd floor. The warehouse was dim, filled with shipping containers and pallets. Lucas's military training automatically mapped exits and cover points. 3 more armed men on the ground floor. Camera in the northeast corner. Steel stairs leading up. On the 2nd floor, Ramon Haley sat behind a desk in what had been converted into an office. He was in his late 40s, well-dressed in expensive casual wear, looking more like a successful businessman than a drug dealer, which Lucas supposed was exactly what he was. "Mr. Turner, thank you for coming." Haley gestured to a chair. "Drink." "I'm fine." Haley poured himself whiskey from a crystal decanter. "You're a careful man. I respect that. The vest, the tracking device in your watch, the dead man's switch on your computer files. Very professional." Lucas kept his expression neutral. "You knew I'd take precautions." "Of course. I'd be disappointed if you didn't." Haley sat down. "The intelligence you provided was exceptional. Tanner's organization collapsed in 3 weeks. I've expanded into 4 new territories. Conservative estimate is my operation's grown 30% since we started our arrangement. Glad I could help." Which brings us to compensation. "You asked me to keep my business away from your neighborhood. I've honored that. But you gave me intelligence worth millions. That deserves reciprocation. I told you what I wanted. My neighborhood stays clean. That was the deal." Haley smiled. "That was the initial deal. But I'm a businessman, Mr. Turner. I invest in valuable assets. And you're a very valuable asset." Lucas's instincts screamed warning. "I'm not interested in working for you. Not working for me. Working with me." Haley leaned forward. "You have skills, intelligence gathering, strategic planning, security expertise. I have resources and reach. Together, we could build something remarkable. Protection services for high-value clients. Corporate security with real teeth. Perfectly legal consulting work that happens to benefit from certain insights. You want me to be your intelligence officer. I want you to be a partner in a legitimate security consulting firm that occasionally handles sensitive situations. You'd make more money than your current corporate clients pay. You'd have access to resources that would make your work easier. And most importantly, you'd have my absolute guarantee that your family remains untouched by this world. Lucas understood the unspoken threat. Right now, Haley was offering partnership, but if Lucas refused, that offer could become leverage. Haley knew about Lucas's role in destroying Tanner. He had evidence of Lucas providing intelligence to a criminal organization. If Lucas walked away, Haley could destroy him. I need to think about it, Lucas said carefully. Of course. Take a week. But Mr. Turner understands something. Haley's voice hardened. We have an arrangement now, whether you want it or not. You involve yourself in this world when you decided to feed me intel. You can either profit from that involvement, or you can become a problem that needs solving. Your choice. Lucas drove home in silence, his mind racing through scenarios and responses. Haley had outplayed him. Lucas had been so focused on destroying Tanner that he hadn't fully considered the consequences of empowering Haley. Now Haley owned him, unless Lucas could find a way out. At home, Lucas went straight to his office and began working. He pulled up everything he had on Haley's operation, the intelligence he'd gathered while investigating Tanner, the new information from their meeting, patterns, and vulnerabilities. There had to be a weakness. There always was. At 2 a.m., Lucas found it. Haley's expansion had been rapid, too rapid. He'd absorbed Tanner's territory, but hadn't fully consolidated control. Some of Tanner's old dealers had switched allegiance to Haley, but their loyalty was mercenary. They'd work for whoever paid best. And Haley's suppliers. Lucas had those names from the intel he'd collected. They were independent operators who sold to whoever had cash. They didn't care about territory or loyalty. More importantly, Haley's operation was now large enough to attract serious federal attention. The same DEA and FBI agents who'd taken down Tanner will be looking at who filled the vacuum. Lucas began formulating a plan. Not to destroy Haley. That would be too obvious, too risky. But to make Haley decide that Lucas was more valuable as a friendly independent than as a coerced partner. The key was leverage. Lucas needed something that made him more dangerous to pressure than to leave alone. Over the next 3 days, Lucas worked in secret. He compiled a comprehensive intelligence package on Haley's organization. Everything from supplier networks to distribution routes to corrupted officials. He identified 5 major operations that would cripple Haley's network if disrupted. Then he created a sophisticated dead man's switch. If Lucas failed to log into a specific encrypted server every 72 hours, the intelligence package would automatically be sent to the FBI, DEA, and every major news outlet in Philadelphia. But he also created an insurance policy. He documented his own involvement in feeding intelligence to Haley, presented as a counterintelligence operation to gather evidence on both Tanner and Haley simultaneously. He had Agent Howard's contact information, records of their cooperation on the Tanner case, even recordings of Haley's implied threats. If Lucas disappeared or had an accident, the evidence would paint him as an intelligence asset working to infiltrate criminal organizations, and Haley as the criminal who killed a federal cooperator. It wasn't perfect, but it made Lucas toxic to eliminate. On the 6th day, Lucas drove back to Haley's warehouse. Same guards, same setup. But this time, Lucas wasn't nervous. Haley looked up as Lucas entered. Mr. Turner, have you considered my offer? I have, and I'm going to decline. Haley's expression darkened. That's disappointing. I thought we understood each other. We do, which is why I'm going to explain exactly why forcing me in a partnership would be a mistake. Lucas pulled out his phone and brought up a file. This is a comprehensive intelligence package on your organization. Supplier networks, distribution routes, financial records, corrupted officials. Everything the FBI would need to do to you what they did to Tanner. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining the reality of our situation. This intelligence package is on a dead man's switch. Every 72 hours, I have to log into a secure server to prevent automatic distribution to law enforcement. If I'm killed, arrested, or disappeared, your operation collapses within days. Haley's jaw clenched. So you want to hold this over my head forever? No, I want mutually assured destruction. Because I also compiled documentation of my role in providing you intelligence against Tanner. If you expose me, I expose you. If I expose you, you expose me. Neither of us can move against the other without destroying ourselves. That's not partnership. That's a standoff. Exactly. Which brings me to my actual proposal. Lucas leaned forward. You stay out of my neighborhood. You never contact my family. You never ask me for intelligence or favors. In exchange, I don't actively work against your organization. I maintain the dead man's switch to protect myself, but I don't proactively share anything with law enforcement. So I get nothing from this arrangement. You give me not destroying your operation, and you get peace of mind that I'm not working for the FBI to bring you down. Because if I were, you'd already be arrested. Haley stared at Lucas for a long moment. You're playing a dangerous game. I learned from the best. You show me how leverage works. Now I'm using that lesson. Finally, Haley laughed, a genuine, appreciative sound. You've got balls, Turner. I'll give you that. Most people in your position would just run or cooperate. You're negotiating. I'm establishing boundaries. I protected my family from Tanner. Now I'm protecting them from you. Nothing personal, just business. Haley considered this. All right, we have a deal. Mutually assured destruction. You stay out of my way, I stay out of yours. But Turner, if you ever change your mind about cooperation, the offer stands. A man with your skills could go far in my organization. I'll keep that in mind. As Lucas left the warehouse, he felt the weight lifting. It wasn't perfect. He'd have to maintain the dead man's switch indefinitely, always looking over his shoulder. But his family was safe. The threat was contained. He'd won by making himself not worth the cost of fighting. Sometimes the best victory was the one where nobody died. Chapter 8. Confrontation and Truth. 3 weeks after his meeting with Haley, Lucas was settling into a new normal. The dead man's switch ran automatically in the background of his life. A simple weekly login that took 30 seconds. Haley's organization stayed far from Riverside. The neighborhood remained quiet. But Lucas knew that peace built on threats was fragile. On a Saturday morning, Lucas was in the garage working on Hannah's car when Agent Howard called. Lucas, we need to talk. In person. The tone made Lucas's instincts flare. About what? Not over the phone. Can you meet me at the office in an hour? Lucas found Howard in a secure conference room at the FBI field office. The agent looked tired, frustrated. We've got a problem, Howard said without preamble. Ramon Haley. Lucas kept his face neutral. What about him? He's expanded significantly since Tanner went down. Absorbed most of Tanner's old territory, recruited some of his dealers, basically took over as the new major player in South Philly drug distribution. I wouldn't know about that. Howard slid a folder across the table. This is surveillance footage from various operations over the past month. Haley's crew hitting Tanner's old distribution points with almost supernatural accuracy. Like they had detailed intelligence about locations, schedules, security. Lucas opened the folder but didn't look down. He met Howard's eyes. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that the same intelligence package you gave us about Tanner could have been very valuable to Haley. And I'm wondering if maybe some of that intel went to more than just the FBI. Are you accusing me of something, Agent Howard? I'm asking a question. Because if you traded intelligence to a criminal organization, even to protect your family, that's a serious crime. And I need to know if my star witness in the Tanner case has a credibility problem. Lucas had anticipated this conversation. He prepared for it. You're right, Lucas said quietly. Some of the intelligence about Tanner's organization did reach Haley. Howard's face hardened. Jesus Christ, Lucas. But not from me. From Jamie. Lucas pulled out his own folder, one he'd carefully prepared over the past weeks. My sister-in-law was desperately trying to save herself. She knew details about Tanner's operation from Luther. When she was released on bail, she was terrified. Luther was cooperating, but Merle wasn't. Tanner's people were still out there. She thought if she gave information to Haley, he'd protect her from Tanner's crew. That's a hell of a claim. It's documented. Lucas opened the folder. Inside were carefully edited recordings of Jamie's police interviews, highlighting moments where she discussed Tanner's operations. She knew more than she told you. She held some back and traded it to Haley for protection. When I found out, I confronted her. That's why she moved to Pittsburgh. I told her if she didn't get out of Philadelphia and away from all of this, I'd report her violation of her cooperation agreement. It was a lie. A carefully constructed cover story that protected Lucas while explaining Haley's intelligence windfall. The recordings were real. Jamie had provided detailed information in her interviews. Lucas had simply implied she'd held some back for her own purposes. Howard studied the documents, his jaw working. If this is true, Jamie violated her plea agreement. She could go to prison. She was scared. She made bad decisions out of fear. Lucas met Howard's eyes. But she's out of the game now. She's in Pittsburgh, doing her community service, staying clean. Putting her in prison doesn't serve justice. It just destroys what's left of her life and devastates my wife. This isn't about your wife. This is about maintaining the integrity of federal investigations. With all due respect, Agent Howard, Haley expanding into Tanner's territory doesn't affect your case. You have Tanner, Luther, Merle, and a dozen other defendants locked up. The RICO case is solid. What happens in the street-level distribution afterward isn't your jurisdiction. That's DEA and local narcotics. Howard was silent for a long moment. You're asking me to ignore a potential compromise of the investigation. I'm suggesting that going after Jamie serves no purpose except punishing a desperate woman who made mistakes. And it might compromise the Tanner prosecution if defense attorneys argue that cooperation witnesses were trading intelligence to criminals. It was a subtle threat, and Howard recognized it. If the FBI went after Jamie, Lucas would make sure the defense knew about it. The publicity could damage the Tanner case, create appeals issues, turn a clean prosecution into a mess. Howard closed the folder. I'll need to discuss this with my superiors. But Lucas, if I find out you're covering for your own involvement, if you traded intelligence to Haley yourself, this conversation won't protect you. Understood. I'm just trying to protect my family from the fallout of Jamie's mistakes. After Lucas left, he sat in his car for a long time, hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. Howard had bought the cover story, at least for now. But it was a reminder that the web Lucas had woven was complex, with multiple people who could expose pieces of the truth. Jamie was the weakest link. If the FBI questioned her directly about intelligence sharing with Haley, she might contradict Lucas's story simply because she didn't know she was supposed to corroborate it. Lucas made a decision. He called Jamie's number. She answered on the third ring. Lucas? What's wrong? We need to talk about your cooperation agreement and what you told various people about Tanner's organization. I don't understand. Just listen. The FBI knows that Haley got intelligence about Tanner. They're asking questions about where it came from. If they contact you, you tell them that you held back some information from your initial cooperation because you were scared of Tanner's people retaliating. You traded that information to Haley in exchange for protection. Then I found out and made you move to Pittsburgh. There was a long silence. But I didn't. I know you didn't. But this is the story that keeps both of us out of prison. You violated your cooperation agreement by holding back information. That's a problem, but it's a smaller problem than me trading intelligence to criminals. If you stick to this story, they'll probably just add conditions to your probation. If you contradict it, we both go down. Lucas, I can't lie to the FBI. You already lied to them. You lied when you said you told them everything. Now I'm just asking you to be consistent about which lies you told. His voice softened. Jamie, I protected you in all of this. I could have let you go to prison. Instead, I made sure you got probation. But that protection only works if we're aligned. Do you understand? Another long silence. Then, quietly, yes. I understand. Good. Practice the story. Make sure you can tell it convincingly. And, Jamie, stay in Pittsburgh. Don't come back to Philadelphia. Ever. After he hung up, Lucas sat with the weight of what he'd become. He'd started this operation to protect his family from criminals who'd violated their home. Now, he was manipulating witnesses, coordinating false statements, threatening his own sister-in-law. But his family was safe. That was what mattered. That evening, Lucas took Vivian and Hannah out to dinner at their favorite Italian restaurant. Hannah was excited about college preparation, talking about dorm preferences and freshman seminars. Vivian laughed at her daughter's enthusiasm, looking more relaxed than she had in months. Lucas watched them both, committing this moment to memory. This was why he'd done everything. The planning, The manipulation, the carefully orchestrated destruction of criminal organizations, the deals with devils like Haley. All of it was for this, for his wife's smile, his daughter's future, the safety of the life they'd built together. After dinner, as they walked to the car, Hannah hugged Lucas tightly. "Thanks, Dad, for everything. I know this whole thing with Aunt Jamie was hard, but you handled it. You kept us safe." Lucas hugged her back, feeling the fierce protectiveness that had driven every decision. "That's my job, kiddo. Keeping you safe." What Hannah didn't know, what Lucas would never tell her, was exactly what keeping her safe had required. The surveillance, the manipulation, the strategic destruction of human lives, the alliances with criminals. Sometimes being a good father meant doing terrible things. As they drove home through the quiet streets of Riverside, Lucas thought about the intelligence package sitting on his secure server, the dead man's switch protecting his family, the complex web of lies and leverage he'd constructed. He'd won, but the victory had cost him something essential: the belief that he was fundamentally a good person making righteous choices. Now he knew the truth. He was a man who'd learned how to win in war zones, and when his family was threatened, he'd simply applied those lessons at home. The civilians around him, Vivian, Hannah, even Jamie, they lived in a world of laws and ethics and moral boundaries. Lucas had learned to live in the shadows between those boundaries, where survival mattered more than righteousness. And he'd do it all again without hesitation, because at the end of the day, his family was safe. And that was the only victory that truly mattered. Chapter 9. Resolution and New Beginnings. 6 months after Daryl Tanner's arrest, Lucas stood in a federal courthouse watching the final act of a drama he'd orchestrated from the shadows. Tanner sat at the defense table, his expensive suit unable to hide the way prison had hollowed him out. The jury had deliberated for just 4 hours before returning with guilty verdicts on all counts: RICO conspiracy, drug trafficking, witness intimidation, money laundering. The judge's sentencing was swift and severe: 35 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. As marshals led Tanner away, he looked across the courtroom directly at Lucas. There was no anger in his eyes anymore, just a kind of exhausted recognition. He knew who destroyed him, even if he could never prove it. Lucas held his gaze until Tanner was gone. Agent Howard met Lucas outside the courthouse. That's the end of it. Tanner's organization is completely dismantled. 12 major defendants convicted, 37 total arrests, and we've disrupted about $60 million in annual drug distribution. Good work, Lucas said. We couldn't have done it without your intelligence and cooperation. Howard paused. I never followed up about that Jamie situation. My superiors decided that pursuing potential violations of cooperation agreements would compromise more important prosecutions. So that matter's closed. Lucas nodded, relieved but not surprised. The FBI had bigger concerns than a scared woman who might have held back information. What about Haley? Lucas asked carefully. Howard's expression darkened. Still operating. Bigger than ever, actually. But he's smart. Keeps his hands clean, uses cutouts and intermediaries. We're building a case, but it'll take time. I'm sure you'll get him eventually. Yeah. Howard studied Lucas. You know what's interesting? After Tanner went down, there was this brief window where we thought maybe the intelligence leak would help us flip someone in Haley's organization. Use them against each other. But Haley seemed to anticipate that. He locked down his operations, compartmentalized information, made himself nearly untouchable. Sounds like he learned from Tanner's mistakes. Or someone taught him. Howard's gaze was sharp. You ever think about what we discussed? Joining the Bureau? You've got the skills, the experience. Could do a lot of good. I'm happy consulting. Less politics. Howard handed Lucas a business card. My offer stands. If you ever want to use your talents for something more than corporate security, call me. The Bureau needs people who understand how to think like the enemy. After Howard left, Lucas drove to Hannah's high school to watch her final debate tournament before graduation. She was magnificent, confident, articulate, destroying her opponent's arguments with precision and evidence. She'd gotten her acceptance to Penn State with a full academic scholarship. In the fall, she'd leave for college, safe and unburdened by knowledge of what her father had done to protect her. That evening, the Turner family gathered for a celebration dinner, just the three of them, in the home that had been violated but was now secure again. To Hannah, Vivian raised her glass. Our brilliant daughter, heading off to amazing things. They clinked glasses. Lucas watched his wife and daughter laughing together and felt the weight of the past months settling into something like peace. Later, after Hannah went upstairs to pack for a weekend trip, Vivian and Lucas sat on the back porch with wine. "Have you heard from Jamie?" Vivian asked quietly. "Last week. She's doing well, working at a community center in Pittsburgh, fulfilling her service hours. Staying clean. Do you think she'll ever really turn her life around?" "I hope so. For her sake and yours." Vivian was quiet for a moment. "I know you did something, Lucas, beyond just catching them. The way everything fell apart so completely. Tanner's organization, all those arrests happening simultaneously, Haley's crew attacking at exactly the right moments. That wasn't coincidence." Lucas sipped his wine, choosing words carefully. "I protected our family. That's all that matters. I'm not asking you to explain. I'm just saying, I know you, Lucas. I've been married to you for 14 years. I know you're capable of things that would terrify most people, and I'm grateful for that. For you." She took his hand, squeezing it. "Whatever you did, however you did it, thank you for keeping us safe." Lucas kissed her forehead. "Always." What he didn't tell her was that the protection was ongoing. The dead man switch still ran in the background of his life. Insurance against Haley or anyone else who might threaten his family. The surveillance equipment remained in place, monitoring for threats. His contacts in law enforcement and corporate security kept him informed about potential dangers. He'd learned that safety wasn't a destination. It was a constant vigilance, a permanent state of readiness. 1 week later, Lucas received an encrypted email from an address he didn't recognize. He opened it carefully, running security protocols. Inside was a single message. "Impressive work on the Tanner situation. I represent people who appreciate competence and discretion. If you're interested in consulting opportunities that match your particular skills, we should talk. No obligations. Just a conversation. Contact me only if interested. Encrypted phone number." Lucas stared at the message for a long time. This was how it started. One job, one compromise, one step into a world that was hard to leave. He could ignore it, stick to corporate security, legitimate work, the normal life he'd built. Or he could acknowledge what the past 6 months had proven. He was exceptionally good at a very specific kind of work. The kind that required thinking like the enemy, operating in shadows, doing what others couldn't or wouldn't. Lucas closed the email without responding, but he didn't delete it, because part of him, the part that had spent 12 years in war zones, the part that had methodically destroyed a criminal organization to protect his family, that part understood the appeal. That night, Lucas activated his secure server and logged into the dead man's switch. Everything was nominal. The intelligence package on Haley remained secure, ready to deploy if necessary. He reviewed his security systems, his contingency plans, his emergency protocols. Everything in place, everything ready. Then he went upstairs to where Vivian was reading in bed. "Everything okay?" she asked, looking up. "Everything's fine. Just checking some work stuff." He climbed into bed beside her, pulling her close. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. Lights in windows, families in homes, the ordinary peaceful life that most people took for granted. Lucas had learned that peace was never given. It was earned, fought for, sometimes built on compromises that would horrify the people it protected. He'd made those compromises, done those things, become someone his younger self might not recognize. But as he lay there with Vivian beside him, knowing Hannah was safe upstairs, knowing the threats were contained and his family protected, he had no regrets. Some men measured success in money or power or fame. Lucas measured it in the peaceful breathing of his wife, the sound of his daughter's music drifting down from upstairs, the security of a home that no one would dare violate again. He'd won, not through the law, not through conventional justice, but through understanding how power worked and being willing to use it without hesitation. And if that made him something other than a good man, If it made him dangerous, ruthless, someone who operated by different rules, so be it. His family was safe. That was the only truth that mattered. 3 months later, Lucas sat in his office reviewing a new corporate security contract when his encrypted phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thanks for keeping your word about the neighborhood. Clean and quiet, just like we agreed. Professional respect. RH. Lucas smiled slightly and deleted the message. Mutual respect between adversaries. It was better than most alternative outcomes. Hannah was thriving at Penn State. Vivian had been promoted at the hospital. Jamie was completing her probation successfully in Pittsburgh. Tanner was in federal prison. Luther was in witness protection. The neighborhood remained peaceful. All threats contained. All loose ends managed. All consequences anticipated and planned for. Lucas returned to his contract review. Just another security